Chapter 1971. Yin Nuashing locked her eyes on the vortex in front of her. Just as she was about to step into it, she contacted Yuan Ji through her soul. We are ready to go in. Don't be nervous if we lose contact later. By the way, if we really lose contact, it may be about 15 years. I'll leave the void front line to you. Lord Feng, please be careful. Please come back safely. Yin Nuashing nodded casually. The moment she stepped into the white vortex, she suddenly exclaimed in her heart. She looked at the people who were quickly disappearing in various places of the vortex. The space behind her suddenly opened up. Chains of order came out of it and rushed towards CU, Little Hour, and the others. She grabbed Hui and the little angel beside her. The surging origin energy shrouded them. She whispered, "Hold on tight. There's a teleportation." Everyone hurriedly grabbed the chains. Before they could do anything else, a light suddenly flashed in front of them. A strong white light rushed into their eyes, blinding them. A huge aura of the void and space covered them at the same time. They only had time to mentally prepare themselves that they were about to be teleported. Then, a strange feeling suddenly came over them. The teleportation was over. The light lasted for a while before it slowly dissipated. The group quickly opened their eyes and looked around vigilantly. They said in unison, "Where is this? Damn, it's so barren. It's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. Energy. Give me energy." The energy is thin. Little star, it's so uncomfortable. Well, it was not very neat. And this place was as they said. It was really barren. The energy was barren, and so was the environment. Although they would not be affected by the energy in the outside world, there was still some discomfort in their senses. It was like a group of people who did not need to breathe or even have a heartbeat would habitually breathe and let the light in their chests flutter. It was an action and feeling engraved in their consciousness. The surroundings were silent, and the sky was blocked by dark clouds, leaving only a dim light spreading between heaven and earth. They stood on an ordinary, barren mountain without any bright spots. Looking around, they found that this should be a hilly plain with uneven terrain all around. The environment was as barren as mentioned earlier, with yellow soil everywhere. The withered trees standing on the ground were like solidified soldier statues standing on the yellow sand, with not even a single leaf left. The entire land was devoid of greenery, and it was truly a wilderness. The energy concentration was also maintained at an extremely low level, and with a single breath, one would be worried that one would accidentally drain the little energy left in this place. There were no ghosts around. There were only the 10 of them. The others were scattered somewhere. Siyu sniffled. After a moment, she cried out in surprise and threw herself into Little Star's arms. He was stunned. He subconsciously hugged her and looked around nervously. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" The little girl was embarrassed. She snuggled in his arms and said softly, "The energy is so thin. It's more comfortable to hug you." "Yin Nuashing, am I a large energy source?" Everyone nodded. Xiao Shi quickly added, "The largest energy source in the void of order." Sui Qing also said, "The original light shines on this body. The void is indestructible, and the energy is infinite." You said it. The original light is a special case. Let's not talk about it first. Let's talk about myself. Yin Nuashing coughed and said quickly, "I just have a little more energy than all of you. You bunch of Yuanshi. It's already strange that all of us who are close to the peak of Yuanshi can't have as much energy as you. Count the world light orbs you have. Do you dare to tell me how many world light orbs you have in your spiritual world, soul dimensional space, spiritual world, and space of consciousness?" We stared at him with his hands on his hips and said loudly, "Look at the energy you're releasing. In this place where the energy is thin, even the origin mark can't contain the energy you're accidentally releasing. But I really don't have that many world light orbs with me." Yin Nuashing grimaced. "There are only about 10,000 of them. Everyone." This person's mental illness was getting worse. He brought an entire world group with him. They didn't know what his soul was made of, but it could actually withstand the weight of 10,000 world light orbs. If they were in his shoes, they could only withstand 100 world light orbs. There are 70 to 80 times this amount in the sea of energy. I should have brought some of them here. Those world light orbs are a little more advanced. Everyone, there was no bottom line when it came to mental illness. What's more, he liked to break through the bottom line and become mentally ill at the same time. This was very observant. Shuang Shuang looked at Siyu, who was huddled in Little Star's arms. She also went over and huddled behind him. She pressed her hands on his shoulders and sniffed his body. She took a deep breath and nodded. Her pretty face was full of joy. Rich energy. He's alive. Blue Phoenix, come here. Yin Nuashing. Shuang Shuang, you've been led astray. Half a minute later, Yin Nuashing was surrounded by 4 girls. He looked around and felt a little uncomfortable. These girls were just messing around under Siyu's lead. His energy had spread about 10 feet away. Well, it seemed that his energy was really a little frightening. The energy in this place was also a little too thin. He didn't need to come over, but they just liked to mess with him. Forget it. Let them be. According to the theory that this land is a world light orb, we are now in the wilderness of space, right? And it's a very early wilderness. We looked up at the slightly dark clouds in the sky and frowned slightly. But the land is a world light orb. I really didn't think of this before. We have encountered a similar situation. Yin Nuashing patted the long hair of Siyu, who was nestled in his arms, and said, when we went to attack the Divine Shadow Clan, didn't we split up? Siyu, Qing Wang, and I met up in a world similar to this one. Blue Phoenix reminded the Spirit Gathering Continent. That place was an experimental world created by the former Divine Shadow Clan. Its existence was probably carefully adjusted. In the entire starry sky, there was only one continent and countless archipelagos surrounding the continent. The sun, the moon, and the stars really existed, but there was no such thing as a galaxy. In short, the stars were like decorations hanging high in the sky, used to decorate the entire continent. The switching between day and night was completely changed by the rules. Well, at that time, the situation was urgent, so we did not explore too deeply. We only knew part of the situation, but we did not know more details. This place, Yin Nuashing looked around and moved the wings wrapped around him by the little angel a little. Since it was said that it was a sealed little world, it might be a broken little world. Let's wait until we see the details before we talk about it. It's good that we are alone. This way, we can act as we want. It's not worth holding back and being restrained. We try to contact the Void Frontline. After trying for a while, he helplessly shook his hand and turned to Maple. You were right. The connection between the outside and the Void Frontline has been cut off. We can't contact the Void Frontline. We don't know if something will happen if we stay here for 15 years. Yin Nuashing sighed in distress. Although she knew that the underworld would not be just right in 15 years. No, this was a matter of probability. It was not just a matter of probability, but also a matter of psychology. She was afraid that something would happen in these 15 years. By the time they got out, the Void of Order would have been charred, and the underworld would have killed their way to the celestial realm. Then everyone looked at each other and grimaced. Their faces were full of worry. He sighed. Forget it. Let's not think about that for now. If there's an emergency, we should be able to blast through this place and kill our way out. But we can't judge when it's an emergency. Hui shrugged and waved his hand. He led the way down the barren mountain. Forget it. Let's finish this as soon as possible and see what we can do when the time comes. Yin Nuashing stared at him. Do you know where we're going? Hui froze. He maintained his original posture and walked back. He looked at him with an embarrassed smile, then turned to Shuang Shuang, who was lying on his back. Shuang Shuang, where are we going? I don't know. Shuang Shuang shook her head and knocked her head against Little Star's neck twice. I can feel it. It's completely gone. Ning Fei heard this and grimaced. Did we go to the wrong place? God knows. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and patted Siyu, who was in her arms. She moved her body so that the girls would let go of him. She then took out the rhythm of light and placed it on the ground. Anyway, let's just treat this place as the destination we're looking for. It's just that the destination is as big as an entire world of light. It's not surprising that it's hidden in a corner. We're about to set off now. The first step is very important. With a clang, the rhythm of light fell to the ground. The hilt was pointed forward. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and pointed forward. She shouted with a powerful aura, "Go this way!" Everyone was speechless. When will he change this bad habit of randomly pointing the way? Anyway, we don't have a direction now. Yin Nuoxing put one hand on her waist and swung her long hair. She shouted through the soul transmission, "Little Qing, point the way." "Master Phone, we didn't find anything here. Please wait a little longer." "Look." Yin Nuoxing shrugged at everyone who looked troubled. She replied to I Ching, "It's fine. I'm not rushing you. Take your time. There's no rush. Remember to save your strength." "Understood. We'll obey the god's orders." Everyone, set up the small temporary creation that we brought earlier. Sit up. Get excited. Get high. Everyone in the soul was extremely excited and responded in a mess. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing's eyes widened and he was dumbfounded. He hurriedly grabbed I Ching, who was about to leave. "Wait a minute. What is that little temporary creation you guys were talking about?" That. It's something that the logistics people made during the 20 years that you were in hibernation." I Ching was a little confused. "Didn't Master Hui tell you?" "Oh, after you came out, everyone went for the baptism, so they forgot about it." Yin Nuoxing glanced to the side. With Hui at the center, everyone turned away with a whoosh to avoid his gaze. He rolled his eyes hard. These forgetful fellows. As the name suggests, the small temporary creation uses a part of the laws, order, and energy of the creation to form a structural core. It can be unfolded elsewhere into a small creation that can be used for about 3 days. It retains all the functions of the creation, and because it's quite convenient to prepare the core, as long as you bring enough, you can effectively solve the problem of the Void Patrol team not being able to create a new generation of energy tower by hand. It avoids the awkwardness of having to temporarily use the previous generation of energy tower after it's used up. In other words, you don't have to worry about insufficient firepower. The only problem is that because it's a small creation space, the speed at which the energy towers are created is slightly slower. It's only about half to 3/4 of the speed of the creation space itself. Moreover, it's also temporary and needs to be replaced after being used. Fortunately, the structural cores of the small creation space can be prepared very easily. We brought enough over, so Lord Feng doesn't have to worry. I Ching's quick explanation made Yin Nuoxing to indicate that she understood. "Good stuff. Yes. It's even better if it's not temporary." I Ching smiled brightly like a child who was a dozen years old. "Then we'll go prepare some things. Lord Feng, please wait for our good news." Well, although it sounded as if they had left everything to little Qing, they wouldn't just stand there and wait. There were 2 sources of incidents on their side, and something might happen if they went out for a stroll. In the end, they walked in the direction where the rhythm of light fell. There was only wilderness along the way, and it was a barren land where birds didn't lay eggs. Even the wind that brushed against their faces carried a hint of desolation. They had to cross a very long distance before they gradually sensed traces of life. However, it didn't seem to be humans, but some very large, strange life forms. "Phone, look, a primeval stage life form." We tugged at Feng's arm and looked up at the behemoth before them, his handsome face a little dull. "I see it, but what's going on here?" Yin Nuoxing's face twitched a few times. This was still a barren land with barren hills and unruly rivers. In front of them to their right, mountains of thousands of feet and tens of thousands of feet high formed a huge mountain range that stretched as far as the eye could see. After crossing this mountain range, there was a pitch-black, huge humanoid object that looked like an enlarged version of the white light figure. It was even thrown into an ink pool and dyed black. The black aura on its body kept drifting like a haze. It scattered and condensed into a ball and fell to the ground. The thick layer of haze could even distort light, and they could clearly see the obvious signs of distortion in the space around the haze. That towering mountain wasn't even as high as its knees, and looking past it, it could see that there were even more of these strange creatures that were as black as dregs in the distance. There were as many as a nest, and not only were there humanoid creatures, There were also creatures that looked similar to beasts, and there were also strange-looking magical beasts. Speaking of which, could these creatures even be called living creatures? There's a breath of life. It's obviously a type of life form, but the breath is abnormal. Little Hour said softly, I can't detect the existence of any thinking organ. It's suspected to be a life form without intelligence. Its energy and breath belong to order, but its order is relatively low. Its type belongs to the negative attribute. In terms of structure, it should be a half-energy, half-material life form. Its structure is quite chaotic, and it's in an amorphous state. If necessary, it may be able to change its form at any time. The energy of the negative attribute of order did not mean that the negative attribute of order was chaos. It was different. Just like the dark element that appeared in the later era, the dark element also belonged to the negative attribute of order and also belonged to the order. It had nothing to do with chaos. As for the so-called difference between negative and positive attributes, well, actually, there wasn't much to pay attention to. There was a boundary, and the difference in order between these types of energy and objects belonged to the positive or negative category. The further away from this boundary, the higher the positive or negative category would be. If one had to explain it, for the life forms of order, the positive or negative category would be easier to grasp, while the negative category would be slightly more difficult. However, both types of energy and objects belong to order to chaos. The so-called order and darkness in the primordial age were, in fact, the positive and negative in the primordial age. This was a statement that was limited to order. After all, in the primordial age, even the true order and chaos had almost disappeared. Who would still know what the true order was? Drawing a picture, there was a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The left side of the vertical axis was defined as order. The left side of the horizontal axis was positive and the left side was negative. However, no matter how positive or negative they were still order. The right side of the vertical axis was chaos. In other words, the horizontal axis was the boundary between order and chaos. The closer one was to the vertical axis, the lower the level of order and chaos. This was what it meant when the heavenly god of origin and the chaos concept body stood at the leftmost end of the horizontal axis and the rightmost end of the horizontal axis. Positive, negative, and so on. These were the categories that only order had. Chaos, I was chaos. If one had to say that negative and chaos had some similarities in nature, it would be that they both like to go crazy. But it's a little ridiculous for such a life form to appear in this place. Moreover, it's a life form that has just ascended to the primeval stage. At first glance, I thought it was the abyss death mist or chaos spawn. We looked at the nest of black things for a while, then turned around and pointed to the distance. If we keep walking in this direction, we will see a city. Let's go there and take a look. Maybe we can find out about these black things, as well as about this world. Then let's go. Yin Nuashing nodded, and just as he was about to take the lead to walk over, the sky suddenly darkened a lot, causing the group of them to subconsciously raise their heads. And then they saw a large humanoid figure looking down at them, staring at them for a while. Without saying a word, he suddenly raised his mountain-like black hand and slapped it down on them. The vast and mighty energy contained within turned into a storm, and before it even got close, it left a huge palm print on the ground, causing an earthquake of unknown magnitude and trembling like noodles being shaken. A streak of purplish-black sword light erupted from below, shooting into the sky. It cleaved the giant in half along with its attack and energy. The giant's body quickly collapsed after being destroyed by the Netheruin sword's energy. It exploded into a cloud of pitch-black smoke and drifted into the sky, quickly disappearing. Yin Nuashing tidied her messy hair and said, "The wind is really strong." Feng Qing Wang put away her sword and held Little Star's hand. She said, "The attack is so strong. It seems to have found us by following our auras. We have concealed our auras and are still quite a distance away." As she spoke, she was slightly stunned. She reacted at the same time as everyone else and looked at the observer. The observer was stunned. He pointed at himself and said, "Me? Is it because of me? Who else could it be other than you? Look at the energy overflowing from your body. The energy in this place has recovered to a certain level, but you are still releasing energy." Hui grimaced and said, "You are the largest energy source in the void." Yin Nuashing was speechless. Another strange title. It'll be fine once we return to a place where the energy is normal. I'm doing something right now, so it's a little loud. You know, the energy outside is a little thin, so he couldn't help but laugh dryly and tried his best to explain himself. But seeing how everyone rolled their eyes and stuck out their tongues, he knew that his explanation was completely useless. "See, you thought of something." She suddenly turned to Little Star and said, "Are there many creatures in the Yuanshu state in this world?" "No." "Are you sure?" Huey's eyes widened. "Where did this idea come from?" "Because you see, when we scanned the place with our senses, we sensed a lot of human beings. If there are so many of them, and they're gathered not too far away from here, those coal beings will follow Little Star's scent and find the town sooner or later. They're so aggressive. If it is just an ordinary town, it will be gone with a step. That is to say, there should be some human beings who can match these strange beings, right?" See, you shook Little Star's hand and said, "It is easy to think that there are Yuanshu state beings here. Plus, there are a lot of coal beings, so there should be a lot of Yuanshu state beings on the human side. Well, that should be it." Indeed, the city was not too far away from the nest of strange beings. For Yuanshu state beings, this distance was almost negligible, and the city was apparently safe and sound, so it should be equipped with the power to resist these strange beings. Unless these coal beings did not have a large sensing range and did not wander around. Oh, it was hard to say. After all, they were brainless. Speaking of which, this lass had given these strange creatures a name so quickly. Life of Coal. Looking at the extent of their appearance, it was indeed fitting for this name. Compared to those blobs of ink that left behind a trail of smoke wherever they went, the former was a huge source of smog that emitted a large amount of smog. With just one look, one could tell that it was a heavy pollution that could smear the sky with layers of black smog. The latter was at most, a simple smoky makeup, although they could pollute the entire world of order with just a little bit of effort. In short, the idea that there are a lot of Yuanshu state beings in this world had taken root in their minds. On the way to the city, they were already calculating the combat power of this world. They did not use teleportation on the way because they wanted to take a look at the wilderness. But the more they looked, the weirder the idea in their minds became. On the way to the city, they had seen hundreds of nests of these dark-looking things. There were probably millions of them. Their size ranged from tens of thousands of feet to thousands of miles. They were like moving mountains. The highest level of coal beings that they had seen so far was only comparable to the first sky of Yuanshu State. It was an unidentified object flying in the sky. The smog was so heavy that they could not see what it was. They only felt that it was very big, like a floating city in the sky. They seriously suspected that the dark clouds in the sky that had not dissipated and stretched for hundreds of thousands of light years were their masterpiece. When they were still several 100,000 kilometers away from the city, they looked at the horizon and saw a huge energy barrier that stood between the heavens and the earth. It was a behemoth that could encompass many planets. It was also from their current distance that those creatures that were as black as dregs all stopped in their tracks, not daring to come any closer. They froze in place like those withered trees on the ground, probably because they can't get close. Look at them carefully. Hui slowed down his flying speed, turned around, and continued to move forward. He looked at the big blob beside him and said, "They look like they want to go over, but don't dare to. Stop here." The expulsion effect of the barrier? Yin Nuashing looked at the big blob that was only a few dozen meters away from them. Its head was more than 100 times bigger than all of them combined. Now that they had come to the area where the energy had returned to normal, he had concealed his presence. Passing by at such a close distance would not attract the attention of the creatures. Everyone looked at the huge barrier that was hundreds of thousands of miles in diameter and the huge city that was about the same size inside. Then they looked at the circle of cold creatures that had stopped in front of them. They were all confused. The cold creatures that had stopped here had formed a layer, standing still like statues. There was also a nest of cold creatures behind this layer, but the further they went, the fewer there were. The rest basically did not come over. It was as if something had drawn a distance, and the cold creatures within this distance would swarm in this position. Those outside the area would return to the wilderness to wander. Yes, they would wander like wandering ghosts, aimlessly walking around with earth-shaking steps. The huge barrier that stood between heaven and earth was as transparent as water ripples. A circle of ripples would gently spread from the top to the entire barrier every few seconds. When it was not rippling, it was impossible to see the energy barrier in the space. They just observed for a while and carefully stepped into the barrier. When they found that there was no rejection or abnormality, they felt relieved and rushed all the way to the city gate. But it was a little awkward that the gate facing the wilderness was closed. They had to circle around and enter the city from another direction. They came out of the chaotic demon wilderness? This place was still using the common language of the myriad races, so it was a little more convenient. However, when the middle-aged soldier at the city gate opened his mouth and spoke in a tone that could scare him to death, coupled with the terrified expression on his face, it really stunned the group of people. In their hearts, they unanimously labeled this so-called chaotic devil wilderness as a troublesome place. The guard standing outside the gate was a middle-aged soldier at high reciprocity. In front of him stood a group of people who did not look right, were not simple, and looked very strange from head to toe. In particular, when he heard them say that they had just crawled out of the chaotic demon wilderness and how clean they were, he immediately became a little confused as to whether they were making a joke out of him or just spouting nonsense. He looked at the group of people in front of him suspiciously for a while. He stroked his thick beard and frowned, as if he did not plan on delving into it. With a sigh, he waved his hand, "Go in, go in." Even the chaotic demon wilderness can be treated as a joke these days. Yun Nuoshing's group laughed dryly as they slipped into the city. They did not reply. It seemed like the barren land was a terrifying place in the eyes of the locals, such that no one would believe them if they said they had anything to do with it. Even if they tried to argue, it would be useless. They might even be treated as a joke. "Hey!" The middle-aged soldier suddenly called out to them, startling them. They all turned their heads, only to see him with his spear on his shoulder. He stared at them with narrowed eyes and said in a warning tone, "Although I don't know where you came from, since you mentioned the chaotic demon wilderness, I still have to remind you. Don't think that you can go in there just because you've made some achievements at a young age. Who knows how many people have foolishly hung in there with this mentality in a long history of the chaotic demon wilderness. Even their bones can't be found. Seriously, that's not a good place. Why would so many idiots run in there? I don't understand. We will pay attention. Thank you for the reminder." We replied to the warning with a dazzling smile. The group of people also replied before continuing into the city. There was a huge energy ring in the sky above the city. It was filled with all kinds of mysterious runes, and runes that looked very powerful. If one looked carefully, they would notice that it had the same energy aura as the energy barrier that supported the heaven and earth. And the source of both of them seemed to be the pillar in the center of the city. To be precise, it's the energy core inlaid on the pillar. Sui Qing raised her eyes and looked at the top of the pillar, directing everyone to look there. It was a huge white pillar that looked like an all inside an all. There were more than a dozen layers from top to bottom. It was a huge white pillar that was tens of thousands of miles tall. The top of it was inlaid with a cube-shaped energy crystal. It could be felt that it had merged with the pillar. The two worked together to steadily release energy and constantly replenish energy from the heaven and earth. Together, they maintained this huge and eternal energy barrier. This structure was quite similar to the energy tower they used. The tower body and the energy core each had their own uses. The combination of the two could better play a role. Well, in short, we have successfully entered the city. Now, Hui just raised his hand, and Ge Zhongming and Ning Fei, this pair of friends, rushed out. "Then let's go and collect information first." These two young men are quite enthusiastic. Hui scratched his head and turned to look at everyone. Then let's walk around casually first. Chapter 1972. It was an ordinary street, and the architectural style was different from most of the buildings they had seen so far. Some of the larger buildings had spacious and huge arches, as if they were deliberately used to move large objects in and out. The other common buildings were not as wide and tall as they were used to. Most of the buildings on the street were narrower and taller. Buildings of 4 or 5 stories high were everywhere, but they looked quite small, almost like pillars. 1/3 or 1/4 of the internal structure was used to build spiral staircases, which looked like 4 or 5 big rooms with stairs embedded in the interior. From the outside, the buildings were very close together, and there was a sense of oppression, as if the buildings were deliberately squeezed together. If they wanted, the completely connected roof could directly be used as a runway. Xiao Xiao had been a little silent since she entered the city. Her gaze had been fixed on the pillars of the barrier and the ring. Her gray eyes kept flickering, and her gaze moved, causing Yun Nuoxing, who had begun to pay attention to her, to be slightly curious. Enchantment, domain, barrier. Xiaoshi looked at him and raised her eyes higher. It's familiar. I should have seen it before. Maybe it's one of the enchantments we used at that time. Well, it's simple. It's a little rough. Yun Nuoxing listened for a while and understood what she was going to say. The initial version of a defensive domain-type creation? If I remember correctly, it should be very similar. Xiaoshi frowned slightly and nodded slightly. The defensive domain is divided into 2 layers. The barrier is 1 layer, and the energy ring is the other layer. They are both spherical defensive domains, but the defense of the ring layer is more than 100 times stronger than the outer layer. The outer layer is called a defensive domain, but the repelling effect of a certain kind of target is stronger than its defensive effect. 1 layer was used to expel, and the other layer was used for defense. It sounded like a defensive barrier that was placed in some dangerous place where countless lives were threatened. It was used to obtain a peaceful place. It was a bit like a safety camp set up in the wilderness during the reclamation of wastelands, except that this camp was particularly large. After listening to her explanation, Yun Nuoxing also believed that it was another kind of energy creation related to the mythological era with special defense and domain. But if that's the case, then this mysterious place will truly become a mysterious place. He couldn't help but mutter softly. Perhaps it has something to do with our era. Young Master looked at him and nodded gently. The possibility is very high. The moment he stepped in, he raised the level of the incident by 3 or 4 levels. He covered his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Well, this explains why there are so many strange creatures in the primeval realm here. This area must be related to the previous era. See, you tilted her head. Could it be a world left behind from the previous era? Because of some reason, this place, it's settled down. I can't investigate that for the time being, but I did think of something else. Yun Nuoxing raised her head and looked at the sky. The creations of the primeval realm also belong to the previous era. This place seems to have defensive creations from the previous era. What do you think of? Could it be that the order, rules, and energy creations used by the primeval realm were brought out from this place? Hui shook his head after saying this. Oh, wait a minute. Let me sort it out. It should be that the people of the primeval realm brought out the manufacturing method of the relevant creations. After all, they've been fighting for so many years. If they only brought out a batch, it would definitely not be enough. They have to master the manufacturing method themselves before they can use those things without any scruples. That's one possibility. But if that's the case, that High Lord suddenly feels that his identity has become suspicious. Yun Nuoxing asked in return, why is it suspicious? Aya, because of this place. The only basis we have for determining his identity is the creations used by the primeval realm and his own primeval realm. Hui was stunned again as he spoke. He pinched his chin and muttered, 5 eras ago, High Lord was already in the primeval realm. At that time, we didn't sense anyone ascending to the primeval realm, So, so there's no need to be suspicious. You must be a remnant of the previous era. Yin Nuashing shrugged. People can only think faster when they speak. He muttered to himself for a while before he reacted. The suspicious things are at most the creations of the primeval realm. If the creations they have were obtained through this world, then we can rule out the idea that High Lord is related to the war between order and chaos in the previous era. This proves that he might just be an ordinary primeval realm expert in the previous era and not an order warrior. If he was an order warrior, he could easily take out a bunch of top-notch order creations. Look at Jingyun. She dragged Origin's temple and dragged me all over the void to clean up the remains of the Origin's temple. She even brought a bunch of top-notch order creations that I can use as reference. There are even some order creations being used at the front line. This is simply, see you suddenly had an idea and shouted, dragging Dowry to the front line. Puffed. The group of people spat out mouthfuls of water and fell to the ground. Yin Nuashing trembled as she got up from the ground. She knocked on the head of this crazy girl and rolled her eyes. I can barely accept it, even if you talk about resettlement fees, military expenses, rent, and so on. Although housing land has never been a problem. But what the hell is a dowry? See, you covered her head and stuck out her tongue. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and skipped the topic. This also explains why they attacked the celestial realm. It's because they don't care about the primeval god or order at all. They only care about how much they can control. This is true. He covered his face with a worried expression. If it was the order warriors of the previous era, they would have interacted with the primeval god and the first and second generation inheritors. Their degree of intimacy, respect, and even worship for the primeval god would far surpass that of ordinary people. Asking them to do something like this was practically treason. One could easily understand just how much they were thinking just by looking at Jingyun. When Maple destroyed the Temple of Origin right in front of him, that guy's heart stopped on the spot. His soul cracked open, and he almost died. Now that he had reunited with the primeval god ahead of time, if he was asked to attack the celestial realm, he would probably choose to pull out his sword and commit suicide. On the other hand, if the survivors of the previous era were to attack the celestial realm in this era, then they would definitely be the type of people who didn't really do anything. Others would do nothing but carry a bottle of soy sauce with them, but they would carry a hammer. If that's the case, then I won't have to worry about taking action when the time comes. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. Originally, I was thinking that if that so-called High Lord was an order warrior of the previous era, then I might not have been so ruthless. But now, since he's an unimportant person, then I can send him on his way. Damn him for causing trouble for me for the past 5 years. Although I can understand what he's doing, since he's a living being and a human being, I won't be surprised at all by what he's doing. But whatever he wants to do is his own business. If he's causing trouble and hindering me, then I won't care what he's doing. Instead of walking on his own path, he's forced to walk on someone else's path, and he's causing trouble everywhere. I'll just treat him like a piece of trash on the road and send him flying with a kick. When they saw an observer clenching his fists and making a cracking sound, with an expression of wanting to beat someone up, they knew that the High Lord's life was not guaranteed. At the same time, they also congratulated him for obtaining the most luxurious funeral in the Void of Order. Oh, that's right, it can be used by multiple people at the same time. The lower limit is 1, and the upper limit is not capped. The more you use, the more you get. Wandering around the streets, he used various methods to try to understand things about this world. When his social skills were maxed out, he chatted with people all over the streets. This allowed him to get a clear understanding of the information that was being passed around the city, including some trivial things, such as a family's cat or dog running away, Granny Lee's pig squealing in the middle of the night, and so on. All kinds of information that didn't sound very useful. These were just incidental information. Other than that, he also got information about the 3 continents, 5 regions, 8 major cities, and so on. The 3 continents, 5 regions, 8 major cities, and so on were just floating numbers. Because the information obtained from various passersby was not accurate, the smaller numbers were 2, 4, 7, and on the bigger ones were 7 continents, 12 major regions, 20 major cities, and so on. Although he didn't know what the continents and the major regions were, he had collected the information. Anyway, seeing that Hui seemed to be enjoying himself, Yin Nuoxing was too lazy to say anything to him. She left him on the street and let him continue to enjoy himself. She led a group of maidservants to the important place that recorded the information about this world. The Grand Temple does not have an appointment. Guests are not welcome. In the city, in front of a grand, magnificent, and simple temple that was tens of thousands of feet tall, a middle-aged man wearing a white, luxurious, and simple robe and a white hat on his head with a symbol that seemed to be a little famous said softly to them. He waved his hand and gestured to the stairs behind them. His face was calm, and there was no sadness or joy. Everyone, please. Yin Nuoxing. Damn it. Why was the place that recorded the information about this world placed in such a place? Why was it placed in such a place where people couldn't come and go as they pleased? Damn it. Why wasn't there a library or something like that in this place? This place can't say things like books are precious things. Ordinary people can't touch them casually. Can it? It's already proven that there are Yuanshi realm beings in this place. They can't have this kind of drama that can only be performed in the uncivilized era. Right? It can't be, right? It can't be, right? After sneaking away along the stairs for a long distance, Yin Nuoxing looked back with a gloomy face and couldn't help but mutter to herself. The Great Temple was a huge building that was tens of thousands of feet high, with white walls and a blue roof. The decorations hanging on the walls were mostly blue and red, mixed with transparent decorations. Unlike the pillar-like buildings on the street, the Great Temple occupied a large area. In addition to the main body, there were long and narrow triangular spires standing in a neat circle, looking like bamboo shoots. The spires and the main body of the temple were connected by a long and narrow bridge, which made the temple look like a tortoise and a hedgehog. He couldn't look at this building directly. Ignoring the bamboo shoots and hedgehogs, the entire temple looked like a square with a semicircle at both ends. The main door opened in the semicircle position. The overall structure was divided into 3 levels from the center to the 2 ends. In addition to the bamboo spires on the second level, there seemed to be a row of walls and turrets. As for the top level, it was still a row of bamboo shoots. No, those spires really looked like bamboo shoots. Even the structure was layered from the outside to the inside. With such a combination of buildings here, others would say that it was a great temple, but if you were to throw it out and say that it was a fortress or a castle, people would probably believe it. As for why they were here, in short, they were here. They asked Siyu about it, and found out that they could learn a lot of things here. They didn't expect to be rejected at the door when they came. Just as he was thinking about whether he should go invisible and directly teleport in, the voices of the 2 intelligence team sounded at the same time in the soul communication. Mr. Feng, we have more or less understood the matter. Let's find a place to gather and talk about it in detail. Yin Nuoxing, wait, where'd you go to find out about the matter? Teleport in secretly to find out about it? Teleport? Ning Fei was stunned for a moment. After thinking about it, he answered honestly, although I don't know what you have experienced over there, we just walked over to find out about it. Feeling that the soul communication was silent for a moment, he couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. What did you do? Why did you mention teleportation? Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. She calmly told him about how they were rejected at the Great Temple. You went to the Great Temple. Ning Fei suddenly understood and let out a few laughs. He couldn't help but say, according to what we know here, the Great Temple seems to be a very important building all over the world. Although it doesn't involve religion, and it doesn't specifically say how important it is, it's like a secret. Well, in short, it's very important. The degree of importance is because there is no unified answer, so I use my own ideas to sort it out. It's about the same as a major festival that everyone in the world has to celebrate. It's about that important. Because of that, the Great Temple is not a place that you can enter as you wish. However, there may be countless records inside. After all, there's a saying that the Great Temple records everything in the world here. Although we can't find out if it really records everything like the heart of the world, there must be a lot of things recorded. The person who guided you there was not wrong. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. It was not wrong, but it was a little crooked. It was like when he said that he wanted to find a place to lie down and ask for directions, but the person pointed him directly into a coffin. It was really not worthwhile to lie down and get up again, once and for all. There was a particularly eye-catching square next to the great temple, and they were scheduled to gather there. For them, there was no problem in gathering anywhere, so why choose to gather next to the great temple? The more they don't let me in, the more I can't help but want to go in. I'm going to go back for a surprise attack. Yin Nuashing snapped her fingers and said straightforwardly. Seeing everyone's stunned expression, she continued, "Don't you think it's very interesting to go to other people's homes to explore forbidden places and forbidden places?" Everyone. She suddenly became happy, as expected of someone who often went to other people's homes to be intruders. Curiosity doesn't just kill the cat, Feng. Hui patted him on the shoulder and said earnestly, "You said it yourself. What's wrong with that?" Yin Nuashing shook her long hair disapprovingly. "Right now, the only ones in the void who can kill me are the three groups in the chaotic void. I don't believe that there are dozens of chaotic concept bodies in a building that exists all over the world." You? Hui turned pale with fright. Everyone's expression also changed drastically. It took them half a beat to calm down. The former scratched his head and said, "Oh, I didn't say it. You said it. Then it's okay." Yin Nuashing stuck her tongue out at him and made a face. After a while, she turned to Ning Fei and the others. "Okay, let's talk about what you found. Anyway, the 7 of us were all refused entry. The place to find information. Oh, there's no library here. Instead, it's a place called Thousand Books Tower. Look, it's over there." Ning Fei stood up and pointed into the distance. Yin Nuashing and the others turned their heads and saw that it was a tall tower behind the great shrine. If there were no traces of energy flow inside, they felt that a gust of wind would blow it down. The color scheme of the Thousand Books Tower was similar to that of the great shrine. It seemed that some of the more important buildings had a similar color scheme as the great shrine. The roofs were cyan and light cyan, and the walls were decorated with red and blue and transparent decorations or patterns of similar colors. This type of building was on the larger side and had a length, width, and height. As for the other buildings, they only looked like pillars. The colors were mostly gray and red. There were no decorations, and there was nothing special about them. They were just ordinary buildings. As for the information about this world, Ge Zhoming crossed his arms and put on an overly serious expression. He slightly widened his eyes. That posture made Yin Nuashing and Hui unable to help but swallow their saliva and hold their breaths. "I don't know at all." Everyone, Yin Nuashing's face twitched. "Can you not put on such a serious expression and say such shocking words?" Ge Zhoming laughed dryly and rubbed the back of his hands. "Actually, it seems that because the area is too big, we can't understand the situation of the entire world in one go. Even the information we found in this Thousand Books Tower seems to only be information about one large area. Yes, after all, it's a land as big as an entire world of light. It's hundreds of billions or even trillions of light years long. How can we understand it all in one go?" Yin Nuashing tugged at her bangs and tilted her head to look at the great shrine. "The large area you mentioned just now, how many large areas are there?" This 1,000-book pagoda of Boulder City has records of the 3 major regions, but Halcyon and I have carefully compared and restored the map. Ning Fei used energy to piece together the map in front of him and then pointed to the leftmost part of the map. The edges of the map were all chipped. No, the map was chipped from top to bottom, left to right, and some of the edges were clearly marked with incomplete road markings. It was obvious that the markings weren't complete, so they didn't completely understand how the map looked like. "Look, there's a chipped area everywhere." Ning Fei's finger swayed along the bright border. "The right side is the Chaos Demon Wilderness that we just came out of. The entire engraved map is an area of 3 large areas. We compared the dimensions roughly. The longest distance from the northernmost to the southernmost is about 200 billion light years long. The total size of the world is unknown." "What a large area." This is big enough. Huey's face twitched a couple of times. There are maps of 3 major regions, but the information only covers the one where Boulder City is located, right? It's just that the recorded information covers the entire large area. In fact, the information about distant places hasn't been updated for a long time. Gu Zhoming shrugged and sighed. For example, the Thousand Ridge City, which is the furthest away from Boulder City, is located at the edge of this region. There are records of information related to that city here. The latest information is from 90,000 years ago. Isn't the speed of information transmission a little strange? Are there any primeval gods in this place? There's more than one. Yin Nuoxing's face was haggard, and she looked like she was about to collapse. She raised her hand and pointed at the huge building behind the moat. The name that was just given. Are there 12 newly ascended primeval gods in there? God knows what's going on. Gu Zhoming rolled his eyes. Even if there's no communication, something big or small will have happened in the past 90,000 years. But there's no record at all. It can't have exploded, right? About this, I think I should be able to explain a little. Hui lay in front of the energy map and turned his head to Maple with a mysterious smile. He raised his hand and pointed at the map. Maple, come here and look at the mark I added. Yin Nuoxing frowned and walked up to the map. On the map, which was marked with mountains, rivers, large and small cities, and various landmarks, Hui used his golden energy to draw a very conspicuous boundary. The boundary included the Chaos Demon Wilderness that was not completely drawn on the right side of the map. It stretched all the way to the middle of the 3 large areas across a wide area, and then disappeared on the left side of the map that was not completely drawn on the map. What does this mean? Yin Nuoxing stretched out her hand and knocked a few times on the energy map. It's connected with the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Is it a demarcation area? Hui rolled his eyes a few times and said softly, do you remember a long time ago? Well, 5 years ago, when we went to the lower plane occupied by the underworld to clean up. Yin Nuoxing, let's be serious. Oh, didn't we fall into a sea urchin world? We even kidnapped a few mature abyssal death mist consciousnesses. Hui paused for a moment. Normally, Maple would be able to figure it out by himself. He didn't need to continue speaking. Sure enough, after a few seconds, Maple paused, lowered her head, and pinched her bangs. Her eyes flashed as she stared at the map. The surging area? Hui nodded. It's the information I heard before. The Chaos Demon Wilderness is not permanently stationed in one place and will not change. The negative energy is the energy we saw on the Great Demon. Oh, it's the coal life, that Sister C you mentioned. The locals call it the Great Demon and Chaos Demon. The negative energy entrenched in the Chaos Demon Wilderness will cause the earth to wither and everything to wither. When the energy is extremely violent, it will even spread to other places on the earth. That is to say, the Chaos Demon Wilderness will move and expand, and its range will keep expanding. Yin Nuoxing understood. The Great Demon will run around. The negative energy will create the Great Demon and spread the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Looking at the range of human activities, it is normal for them to cover every corner of the world. Sui Qing's blue starry eyes stared at the golden border as she softly muttered to herself. After all, the fixed range of activity of the human clan is not large, and they will not expand at will. As a result, the Chaos Devil Wilderness has the opportunity to wantonly expand. The vast wilderness lies between Boulder City and Thousand Ridge City. If the 2 cities are cut off because of this, it means, she muttered as she turned to look at Feng Ling, there might not be anything related to teleportation in this world. No, but isn't this too ridiculous? Shouldn't this be? Hui shook his head hard. Let's not talk about a large group of Yuanshi cultivators. We can also teleport. As he spoke, he gathered the power of space. Just as he was about to casually open a portal or a space crack, the power in his hand suddenly became chaotic. With a bang, it turned into an energy flash and exploded. Everyone was stunned. Hui looked at his hands blankly. Yin Nuoxing's eyes lit up. She stared at the energy flash that exploded in Huey's palm. After a while, She also raised her hand and tried to gather the power of space to teleport. Without exception, there was also an explosion of light. So, the concept of space in this world is probably in a damaged state. It can't connect two distant spaces through the power of space and space to teleport. We have been relying on flying or adjusting the power of space and rules to shrink space and shorten the distance to move. It is not direct teleportation. There is a certain difference between the two. This difference seems to be able to bypass this damaged concept of space. The method we use to shorten the distance can't catch up to the distance that can be teleported. I think it is the same for the others. Yu's eyes widened. She immediately asked, "What about void teleportation?" Nuashing was silent for a while. She began to gather the power of the void. "I will try, but according to the situation of this world, it is probably not." Just as the gathered void energy was about to do something, it slipped away from their bodies with a loud bang, causing everyone to be stunned. Nuashing silently collected the void energy that had just drifted away. The void has also been destroyed, and it's even more thorough. At this stage, the void is in a state where it can only be seen and observed. It can't be used. Unable to teleport. The middle is separated by the chaotic, demonic wilderness. It can be determined that the map of the entire world is affected by the chaotic, demonic wilderness. Their expansion will also separate the regions that should be connected together. Suiqing's gaze wandered between the two cities she had just mentioned. Perhaps Boulder City and Thousand Ridge City had once interacted with each other until 90,000 years ago, when the chaotic devil wilderness tore apart the land that bordered them. From then on, communication was cut off. That is a zone that poses a great threat to all life forms in this world. We may not be affected too much, but if ordinary life forms step into it, their breath of life may be quickly stripped away. Coupled with the wandering great demons and chaos demons in the primeval realm, it is an extremely dangerous zone. It can be concluded that the isolation between the different zones in this world is quite severe. The chaos demon wilderness cutting up the zones and the destruction of space and void teleportation are both reasons. We looked up at the circular barrier and couldn't help but sigh. No wonder this thing needs to be open all the time. I'm afraid it's not only used to expel the great demons, but also to disperse the negative energy that will spread. Those great demons are born from the negative energy of the chaos devil wilderness. If we don't get rid of that area, we probably won't be able to get rid of those wandering things. And seeing how the chaos devil wilderness is so arrogant to occupy such a large area, we can basically determine that the locals have no way to purify that negative energy. Nuashing could not help but cover her face and shake her head. Why is it another strange world? Can't we encounter a more normal world? Siyu was sitting next to Blue Phoenix, braiding her long hair. When she heard this, she immediately looked up and said, "No, little star, you can't encounter normal things when you go out. The normal things won't come to you for no reason, right?" Nuashing was speechless for a while. She lowered her head and muttered as she combed the feathers of the little angel. After a while, she suddenly stood up and said, "I don't care. Let this world do whatever it wants. Anyway, we are not here to deal with the mess of this world. Let's focus on Shuang's matter." Shuang was very moved. "But I don't know where to go." This sentence made him very moved. However, he had already expected this, so he was completely unmoved. He raised his hand and pointed to the west. "Go to the central area. Even if that place is the chaos demon wilderness, you must flatten that place for me." Everyone looked at him with a bitter smile. He was simply acting recklessly because he had no way. But at this time, there was indeed no way and no direction. He scratched the back of his head in distress. "I'm a little worried about little Qing." "Qing? There's nothing to worry about. Even a mid-level yuansher can destroy this place. There's no need to—" No, not I Ching." Hui shook his head. "I'm talking about Shu Qing who came in with us. I don't know where they are. They're a group of little guys who are only at the peak of the origin realm. If they're too scattered and can't form a formation, they will probably be torn to pieces by the great demon." This. Yin Nuashing covered her face with an embarrassed look. I've almost forgotten about them. Anyway, they are people who have been together for more than 10 days. Don't forget them so quickly, as if you were sentencing them to death. Chapter 1973. He had seen too many random worlds, so many that he couldn't even count them with his 2 hands and 2 pairs of legs. After experiencing so many strange worlds, he had come to a conclusion, and that was, for the locals, there was nothing strange about it. The strange thing was that they found everything strange. Oh, that's nonsense. He had said that many years ago, and now he was just mentioning it again to remind himself and deepen his impression. They who stood outside this world could see the abnormalities of this world the best, and these abnormalities basically existed around the abnormalities of this world. There was a reason for them to exist, or perhaps the abnormalities themselves were the abnormalities of this world, and there was usually some other meaning behind it. It was either a natural disaster or a man-made disaster. If it was a man-made disaster, then they would have to talk about it properly. There might be grievances, national enmity, unforgivable grievances, and all sorts of other things behind it. From the smallest reason to the biggest reason of order and chaos, everything was just a damn thing. If it was not a damn thing, then the world would not have been so colorful. And if it was a natural disaster, then it would have to be talked about in detail, because disasters of this level were definitely void-class natural disasters. But if it was a natural disaster, then it would have to be talked about in detail, because disasters of this level were definitely void-class natural disasters. Since they were not clear about this yet, they couldn't completely connect the dots. So back to the original topic, Shu Qing, cough cough, he didn't really forget. How could he forget about it so easily after only half a day? It was just that he was surrounded by his familiar companions, so he could fly without restraint. So he flew a little high, so he forgot about the fact that he didn't know where the 10,000 people who were thrown into this place were. Since this matter was brought up, they still had to discuss it properly. The biggest threat in this world should be the Chaos Demon Wasteland and the things in it. The combat power of the Great Demon, and so on. Yin Nuashing turned to look at the red and black figure in the background. Blue Phoenix. How was the combat power of the Great Demon? Did you distinguish it just now? They are very aggressive. From the energy I came into contact with, I can still feel. Blue Phoenix tilted her head and thought seriously for a while. They don't seem to be able to use energy attacks. The energy in their attacks is just a part of it. It can't be considered a real energy attack. Their defensive power seems to be slightly weaker. I can't feel anything more. If I were to fight them at the peak of the origin realm, I can fight them from distance, but I can't fight more than 10 of them at once. Otherwise, I would be exhausted. I might be able to last for a while if I only use energy attacks. That means I can fight them a little. As long as I don't encounter a bunch of them, I'll be fine. Yin Nuashing thought for a while and nodded. In short, our current goal is to stroll around and look for people until things can't hold back and come to us. Huey's face twitched. When things can't hold back and come to us, it's already very bad. It's just deadly. Then what should we do? Do you want to tear this world apart first? Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. I have 2 or 3 ways to purify the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Let's destroy this place and return the world to peace. Are you sure you don't want the world to be full of holes? More or less. Blowing it up is the same as purifying it. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and pointed to the Chaos Demon Wilderness on the right side of the energy map. Look, accumulate enough energy here and then explode with a boom. Ignite all the negative energy in one go and burn it all the way to the end of the world. It's very exciting, isn't it? All right, don't worry. There won't be any accidents. I'm super experienced. Everyone. She directly pronounced the death sentence. The little angel trembled and couldn't help but cover her eyes. Wasn't it because she had experience when she burned the realm of the gods in the ancient times? If she let him throw a fire here, a huge pit would appear in this world that they didn't know the name of for the time being, or a huge rift valley that covered countless regions, where it would all be gone and burned clean. Okay, Back to the original topic. The next thing is very obvious. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and forcefully interrupted the topic. In short, we will first go to this central area that might exist in this world. On the way, we will find something that can be called strange. At the same time, we will find the people who came in with us. If we can save them, we will save them. If we can't, we will ignore them. Hui was stunned for a moment. I feel that the rescue you mention here is different from the rescue we understand. For the time being, we are still considered people from the primordial realm, right? If we are from the primordial realm, then we can save them. If we're not from the primordial realm, then we will choose whether to save them or not depending on the situation. Then, if we don't save them, it means we will help them to be more dignified. Good heavens, she was directly cremating them and scattering their ashes. We smiled bitterly for a while and wisely skipped this topic that wasn't easy to discuss. He turned to look at the others. Anyway, we don't have any direction now, so this is fine. What do you think? The group nodded and said in unison, generous. No objections. Anyway, we can't think of a good way. Let's leave it to Little Star. Again, this group of people's answers were really not in sync. For the time being, they couldn't find a reason to stay in Boulder City. Everyone discussed and prepared to leave. There is a reason. How can there not be a reason? I'm still holding a grudge. Today, I'm going to sneak in. Yin Nuashing suddenly pointed at the great shrine. He had just taken 2 steps and was about to turn invisible when he was wrapped tightly by the wings of the little angel and dragged back with Shuang Shuang. She waved to everyone and said, "Well, it's fine. We'll keep an eye on him." Ignoring a certain observer who had suddenly gone crazy, the group discussed their destination and prepared to set off. Before they set off, they still needed to prepare some things for the long journey, such as money, gold coins, and currency. Although they could rush to their destination directly, that would be contrary to their first goal of randomly triggering some things by strolling around. Therefore, it was important to get some money for the journey. It was not important to have a lot of money, but it was important to have enough. And with their means, it was not easy to squander some money. Currency? You're talking about the magic crystals dropped by the demonized life forms, right? Look at you guys. You must have just wandered here and are looking for some money. Well, I have a good place to go. Walk out of the west gate. There's a desert and a burned forest. There are quite a lot of demonized life forms there. Look at you guys. You should be able to handle it. Well then, good luck. A passerby laughed and told everyone the information, and then left in a carefree manner. Hui fell to the ground after hearing it. His face was a mess. You're always faking. One day, you won't even be able to fake anything. Yin Nuashing looked at a certain guardian who was sprawled on the ground with a haggard face, her arms crossed as she scanned the city. Now that I look at it, I realize that this is a world where everyone is a soldier. It fits the situation of using special currency for transactions. That being said, he had seen such a world before. Since the human race had too many enemies that they could not kill them all, due to various physiological, environmental, and other reasons, they simply used the items dropped from their enemies as currency. The enemies here were basically energy type life forms, or half energy and half matter life forms that were similar in nature, such as the great demons and chaos demons. The energy-type life forms were born much faster than the material-type life forms, since their bodies were bundles of energy. If one wanted to eliminate the energy-type life forms by their roots, apart from killing them, one would also have to get rid of the energy domain that caused their birth. Otherwise, both sides would just be wasting each other's energy. After all, it was common knowledge that energy originated from the void and was boundless, meaning that it could never be used up no matter how one fought. Hui stood up at once, his hands pinching his chest with a pained expression. I'm the great guardian of the realm of gods, one of the highest commanders on the front line of the void. I actually have to pay myself for going on expedition. Yin Nuashing grabbed Hui by the back of his collar and dragged him towards the west gate. Let's go, Lord Guardian. Actually, you can fly there yourself. If you want to experience other people's things, then you have to pay yourself. Everyone smiled bitterly as they followed. That being said, they did not expect to go out and pay themselves. It was a fresh experience that they had not had for many years. The demonized life forms mentioned by the passersby just now, they also discovered their true colors after arriving at their destination. They were ordinary life forms eroded by negative energy. There were beasts and demons, and they could also be unlucky people who were killed by passing by. But that was not all. Apart from ordinary life forms, there were also life forms transformed by negative energy of the same standard. The latter was obviously more in number. It felt that the former was just conveniently transformed into demonized life forms, and there was a high probability that their corpses were already contaminated by negative energy. Those demonized lives were only the size of normal lives. The largest one that they had seen so far was only a dozen times larger. They could approach the places that the great devils and the chaos devils could not approach without any concern, but they could not approach the barrier completely. Their actions were not as dull as the latter's, and they would not gather at the maximum distance and stand still. At this moment, they were eyeing the newcomers who were walking close covetously. Because the target is too weak and contains little negative energy, the dispelling effect of the barrier is reduced because of that. But still, it will not let them get close to the barrier. Little Hour explained. After casually wiping out a group of demonized beasts with a wave of his hand, Yin picked up the obsidian-like crystal that had fallen on the ground after the energy dissipated and examined it in his palm. His eyes flashed with a colorful luster. A magic crystal that was only half the size of a fist could release stable and constant energy. It was a small energy source, and its level. Well, a magic crystal that was the size of a pinky finger was about the level of an energy source of daily necessities. This magic crystal that was half the size of a fist could probably release a powerful energy attack. So that's how it is. It is an energy crystal that has been precipitated in the body of a life form after a period of time by negative energy. There is still a trace of life on it, but it will quickly dissipate after leaving. I'm afraid that the energy crystal is also related to the strength of the infected life form. Perhaps when these small demonized life forms gather enough negative energy, the energy crystal will expand, and its size will change accordingly. Naturally, it will become stronger. Shuang was playing with ice sculptures on the ice field in front of her. When she heard this, she tilted her head and said, "Sounds like evolution." Well, it's pretty much the same. Although it is an evolution that is forcefully caused by something that is originally outside the body. After the evolution, the body is still not one's own. Their consciousness will be blurry. Yin nodded slightly. He looked at the hundreds of demonized life forms that were charging towards them without any intelligence or fear. He tried his best to carefully stomp his foot on the ground. The impact of a slight energy explosion scattered all the demonized life forms in one go, leaving only the magic crystals. After collecting this batch of magic crystals, CU was suddenly stunned. Why didn't we go fight the great demons and chaos demons? Everyone was stunned. They did not control the strength of their attacks well, and almost sent the ground in front of them flying into the sky. Why do you think? Yin turned his head to look at Blue Phoenix. The great demons don't have magic crystals. Aren't we watching them together? Oh yes. Sia nodded. When she retracted her gaze, she saw that Blue Phoenix's pretty face was covered in sweat. She was stunned for a moment and carefully moved closer. Blue Phoenix? What's wrong? You're sweating so much. Blue Phoenix hugged the nether void sword and carefully looked at Little Star. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. That the great demons actually have magic crystals, Everyone was stunned again. I didn't control my strength well and broke a piece of it. Blue Phoenix blushed and turned her head away. When I hit it, I could feel that I hit something very hard. I didn't even think about it and use a bit more strength. Everyone, good heavens. At this moment, they did not know whether to complain about this girl's lack of strength or that the magic crystals were too weak. They actually broke them in passing. After learning that the great demons also could also have magic crystals, the group casually scattered the ashes of the demonized life forms in this area and headed towards the Chaos Demon Wasteland. They randomly grabbed a few great demons and beat them up. After putting away the magic crystals that were hundreds of meters tall, they returned to Boulder City. I thought that those life forms only existed in the Chaos Demon Wasteland. While they were dealing with the magic crystals in the city, Huey's gaze crossed the city wall and looked at the place where they had just stopped. He frowned. I have a feeling that these demonized life forms will be a big problem. Demonized life forms that do not have a designated location can only wander in the Chaos Demon Wasteland. The great demons that we saw closest to Boulder City also did not stand in the Chaos Demon Wasteland. Yin Nuashing said, the Chaos Devil Wilderness is just equivalent to their base camp, and many strange things will be born from it. The things that are born from it are also negative energy that will corrode the lives of those who have already died, but for the time being, I don't know if they will do anything to normal lives. If they will, then this thing is probably not much different from the chaos energy. If that's the case, then the only difference is that it has a destructive power to order. Xiao Xiao nodded and said. Yin Nuashing turned her head and asked, is there such energy in order? Currently, I haven't seen it before. Yes, they're all negative energy. Xiao Xiao nodded slightly. Her calm face showed a faint look of reminiscence. We have encountered it a few times. Her Eminence has also discussed such situations. Perhaps it has something to do with order or order and chaos. The relationship between the negative energy and positive energy of order is like the relationship between the energy of chaos and the energy of order. It is slightly different. The difference is just as I said. The destructive power to order is not as pure as the destructive power between order and chaos. Xiao Xiao shook her head. Her Eminence has done research. The degree of influence of order on order is only about 80% of the influence of order and chaos on each other. Let me put it another way. The destructive effect of order on order is actually only 80%, while the destructive effect of order and chaos on each other is 100%. Yin Nuashing was surprised. So there is such a saying? Xiao Xiao tilted her head and looked at him. Didn't you notice that when you fight against chaos of the same level, there is a slight difference? It is easier to fight against the enemy and harder to defend. Don't you feel that way? He crossed his arms and thought about the question carefully. Then, he came up with an answer. Those who are turned into ashes by me are basically going to be turned into ashes. There is no difference whether there is this 20% or not. When the chaos concept entity pressed me into the void and beat me up, there is no difference at all. Because the difference is too big, there is no difference at all. Moreover, there is no enemy of the same level as chaos and order. I can't just drag my own people over and beat them up before expressing my feelings, can I? Xiao Xiao was stunned for a moment. She thought about it carefully and agreed. In their situation, the 20% would not be reflected at the moment, unless the high-level primeval of the underworld and the chaos spawn of the same level appeared at the same time. By then, it would be a little clearer. But you have reminded me. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. Since we know that there is a 20% difference, we should be able to feel a little difference when we fight against the beings of order and chaos of the underworld at the same time. 20% is more obvious. Then we should continue to increase our attack power to make up for that 20%. In short, our attack power should be maxed out. Xiao Zhao's expression was blank. It was as if she had given him an inexplicable encouragement blessing. The magic crystals that they had obtained could not be used directly, nor could they be used as currency. First, they had to go to a place and exchange the obsidian-like magic crystals for a type of purple energy crystal. The difference between the two was that the magic crystals were filled with negative energy and could not be controlled. The purple crystals had been cleansed of the negative energy, and the energy could be controlled. There are also different grades of energy crystals. It seemed that the more complex the shape, the higher the energy content, and the more valuable it was. The shapes that they had seen so far were: the most basic crystal was the shape of a coin. Then there were cylinders, tetrahedrons, cubes, octahedrons, and the one in their hands was an icosahedron. Anyway, there were 6 grades in total. As for the size, other than the pillars, they were the size of 2 thumbs. It was said that they were compressed for convenience of carrying. Other than that, there were also bigger ones, but those sizes were basically not used by civilians. High-concentration energy crystals, anti-pressure, anti-fall, anti-collision, fire, water, wind, and lightning. This thing can be thrown in a magma and burned for 100 years, and nothing will happen to it. Without some special means, don't even think about detonating this thing. If you want, you can put on a glove and punch it. It's much better than any punch. Yin Nuashing held the icosahedron and looked at it for a while. Suddenly, she was silent for a few seconds. Is this thing not uncomfortable in your pocket? Since there's a way to process and transform the magic crystal, that is to say, the people in this world actually have a way to purify the negative energy, right? Hui threw 7 or 8 icosahedrons around as if he was juggling. But maybe it can only purify the negative energy in a small area. It still can't do anything to the chaos demon wilderness? Maybe. Yin Nuashing looked at the huge bag that Xia brought back. As she walked, the inside of the bag made a clanking sound. She couldn't help but tilt her head. So, how many things were exchanged for those 6 huge magic crystals? I'm not sure. Xia shook her head and stuffed the bag into his pendant. She raised her head and thought for a while. According to the discussion of those people when we went out, it seems that it is enough to supply this city with continuous overload for 10 or 20 years. For a normal person, it is enough for a few hundred lifetimes. For a life form of our level, what can also use a very, very long time. Well, after all, it is equivalent to the energy crystal of a beginner yuansher. Yin Nuashing said as she looked at the moat. But it seems that the energy consumption of the city itself is not small. In a situation where the moat is almost self-sufficient, it still consumes so much energy. Forget it. Who cares? After bustling around for a while, they finally set foot on the road to leave Boulder City. There was no way to use teleportation in this world. Instead, they used a common method of transportation that they had not used for a long time: airship. As long as the airship itself was fine and there were no demonized life forms in the sky, moving in the sky was indeed the safest and most stable method of transportation. But wait a moment, he remembered that there were demonized life forms in the sky, and it seemed to be a great demon. Back in the chaos demon wilderness, he had seen something as big as a city floating in the sky, constantly spewing out negative energy. This sudden thought made him shiver. He hurriedly looked around and used his energy to scan the surroundings. When he found that the surroundings were safe for now, he sighed in relief. It seemed that he did not need to get into a traffic accident on a ship. He was not that unlucky. Just like when he discovered that everyone was a soldier, the airship carried 3 or 4 energy crystals made from magic crystals. The airship itself was covered with an energy barrier similar to the moat. There were at least 2,000 energy creations that could be used to attack. Next, this airship was a transport ship used to transport people. It was a small ship, only 3,000 meters long. However, looking at its military strength, with a Yuansher realm captain and a group of reciprocity realm guards, if everyone stood on the deck and carried an energy creation, it would probably become a battleship in an instant. What a simple and honest place. If it was just a normal transport ship, there was no need for such a large force. However, they were clearly guarding against something. For example, a great demon, a great demon, a great demon, and another great demon. Well, let's just hope that there won't be anything stupid on this trip. Forget it. They're just a bunch of things without intelligence. If they want to crash into the ship, they won't consider whether there are people on the ship or not. These things clearly don't belong to the beast race or the Yao race, so they won't be suppressed by Blue Phoenix's aura. As long as there's a barrier to keep them away, it should be fine. Siyu strolled around the deck and suddenly found something. She pulled Little Star and jogged to the front of the ship. The group was stunned for a second before they hurried over. At the front of the ship, they saw a middle-aged man wearing a sleeveless shirt and shorts. He was facing the front of the ship with his arms crossed. His short hair fluttered in the wind, and he wore a headscarf on his head, making him look like a pirate. Hearing a series of jogging footsteps behind him, The middle-aged man turned around and saw a group of people running over. He let out a bright smile and said, "What's wrong, little ones? Are you bored of sitting on the ship?" Yin Nuashing and the others were stunned by the way he addressed them. They looked at each other. Indeed, they looked like they were in their 20s, but how could they really be children? Their real age was a long string of zeros. Moreover, their aura was maintained at the peak of the origin realm. How could they be mistaken for her? Oh, the captain was in the Yuanshu realm. Then it was fine on the surface. It was fine on the surface. Is there no one else on this ship? So you turned around and looked at the deck. Apart from the captain and the guards, she couldn't see anyone else. No one is on this ship at this time of the year. This ship is specially operated for you. It's been chartered. Are you happy? Are you excited? The captain gave a thumbs up with both hands and a wide smile. His radiance was not inferior to a certain guardian's. So impressive. Ningfei glanced at him with a suspicious expression and shrank back. "Captain, you look very suspicious, hey?" "It's nothing suspicious. I just heard that a team that I've never seen before brought back 6 magic crystals from the Great Demon to extend our rock city for 22 years. So I'm a little interested." The pirate captain replied with a laugh. He looked at the map projected in front of him. "By the way, I heard that you're going to the westernmost Abyss Moon City in this area. I deliberately prepared a ship to wait for you to find me. At this time of the year, only temporary ships will go there. You don't look like you know. Are you from somewhere else?" Yin Nuashing and the others looked away and laughed dryly. They really didn't know. Speaking of which, the news had spread so quickly. It seemed that killing the great demon and bringing back the items was something worth mentioning. Was it because there was a nest of them in the banishment area? Oh, but it's not a good time to go to Abyss Moon City. The captain bent over and stared at the symbol of Abyss Moon City on the map. He touched his chin and made a groaning sound. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and understood. "You guys are really working hard. You guys look so young, but you're already drifting around the world and can't return home for a long time. Everyone, no, that was to say that this group of people was at least over a dozen epochs old, with the oldest being over 30 or even 40 epochs old. Although they were a group of undying beings and didn't care much about age, it was just that, forget it, let's not talk about this." The pirate captain probably imagined that they were a group of people who drifted around the world. At this time, they just happened to settle down in Rock City. After a few days, they had to continue on their journey. In fact, they had only stayed for half a day. Well, their situation was actually quite similar. Which place could really be called home? The Void Frontline? Well, that's fine too. Actually, that place could be counted as home. After all, they had stayed there for 5 years. Ningfei laughed dryly for a while and quickly asked, "Hearing you say that, did something happen in Abyss Moon City?" "It's not something that happened. It's something that has been going on for a long time." The captain stood up straight and crossed his arms. His body suddenly exuded a fighting aura. "It's because of the expansion of the Chaos Wasteland." As expected, Hui muttered in a low voice and smacked his lips. This was the biggest thing in the world. Going on for a long time? That means the situation is very serious? Yes. The captain let out a long sigh and continued to respond loudly. "It has reached the point where we have to use energy crystals to provide energy for the Light Chaser Tower to strengthen its defense." How serious do you think it is? That being said, Abyss Moon City has already persisted for 17 years without any signs of exhaustion. As long as there are no major mistakes that cause the deaths of important figures, they can continue to persist. Abyss Moon City also has the support of several nearby cities, so they have enough strength. If Boulder City wants to come and help, it's really beyond their reach. They can definitely help, but if we mobilize our forces and the Chaos Devil Wilderness next to us makes a sound, then it'll be bad. So, our regular forces can't just move around casually. Those from Rock City who will go directly to Abyss Moon City are individuals who will go to help. Almost all of them are roamers who don't have a fixed residence. Most of them are young people like you. Everyone, no. That's why, although the strength of an individual is small, when gathered together, it's still a very powerful force. In this unlucky world, We can only survive for a long time if we unite as one, little guys. Everyone, although this was indeed reasonable, they were not little guys. Look, we're here. The captain waved his hand and pointed to the front, which made everyone not know whether to laugh or cry. They all looked ahead and were stunned. That's your destination, Abyss Moon City. Wow. So you couldn't help but hold Little Star's hand tightly. She swallowed her saliva and complained through the soul transmission. It's so smoky and polluted. It's like a place where the forces of chaos confront each other head-on. The sky and the ground are all dark. Well, it seems that after a little exercise, we need to move a little. Guzhoming clenched his fists and was full of fighting spirit. Let's see what kind of power these guys have. Ning Fei raised his hand and patted him on the head. Take it easy. You can't tear apart the suppression and go on a killing spree. You can't take out the energy tower either. Oh, yes. Then let's carefully test the water. Don't destroy other people's cities, Yin Nuashing said with a smile. Everyone stared at him. You should say that to yourself. This. Chapter 1974. Endless black clouds floated between heaven and earth, as if thick dark clouds had fallen from the sky and smashed onto the ground. Looking at the layers of thick city walls, one could not tell which was which at first glance. Ordinary vision would be completely blocked by the black clouds in front of one's eyes. One could barely make out that some behemoth was approaching the energy barrier with a rapid, earth-shattering movement. Those were just the demonized creatures rushing to the battlefield. The battle at the barrier was actually quite fierce. The two energies of order were desperately bombarding each other, bursting out all kinds of destructive energy fireworks and countless energy impacts. The area from the west to the south of Abyss Moon City had been completely surrounded. The battle line stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles around that arc. It seemed to be a dangerous situation where tens of thousands of troops were besieging the city, but when they thought of the captain saying that they had held on for as long as 17 years, they felt that it was not a very big problem. Looking at the vigorous battle, with dust flying in the dark sky without seeing the sun and moon, was it actually not that dangerous at all? After all, there was still a somewhat harmonious atmosphere in the city. As long as the people were not panicking to the point that the entire city was covered by a heavy and lifeless atmosphere, it proved that the most dangerous time had not yet arrived, and they could still hold on. Abyss Moon City was slightly larger than Boulder City. Due to the continuous attacks, the city's protective barrier could no longer remain transparent in space. When it was revealed, it was still transparent. However, one could clearly see that there was a layer of thin film hanging in the sky. As for the inner layer of the protective barrier, it had an additional ring compared to Boulder City. At this time, it had also expanded to the point where it was pressed against the transparent barrier to defend against the demonized life forms. It's still as lively as ever. No matter how long I come here, it's never peaceful. It seems like it will never end. The captain looked at the slowly approaching Abyss Moon City, and his gaze fell on the vast battlefield in the west and south. There was a dull sound from his throat. The airship slowly stopped on the tower in the east of Abyss Moon City. Perhaps because it was in a state of war, there were not many people in this huge tower, and there was not a single airship around. The ships have all been deployed to the battlefield. After all, it's good to have more combat power at a time like this. You should be able to see it if you look over there. It's at the edge of the light screen of the Light Chaser Tower. When the captain saw their doubtful gazes, he waved his hand and gestured to the west and south. Yin Nuashing and the others easily captured the airships that were standing in the air in front of the energy barrier. Other than the transport ship that they had taken before, there were also models that were tens of thousands of feet in size, hundreds of miles in size, and nearly thousands of miles in size. The latter looked like fortresses on the battlefield. All right, little guys, let's part ways here. After the pirate captain finished talking to the people of the tower, he walked towards them and laughed. Don't die here. Come back to Boulder City when you're free. Of course. Hui grinned back with the same dazzling smile. We won't die here casually. The talkative and cheerful captain returned to the airship with a long laugh. After a while, he turned the ship around and disappeared at the other end of the horizon in the blink of an eye. Although there was no way to use teleportation, the speed of the airship was purely at the level of the Yuansha realm. It did not take long for it to send them from the easternmost to the westernmost of the 3 areas that had been explored. So now, Hui rubbed his fists and looked like he was ready to rush over. Is it time for a good battle? Yin Nuoxing glanced at him. Although it's not impossible to defeat it, it won't take much effort, but this isn't our main purpose here. That's not right. Hui shook his head and patted Maple's shoulder. He said earnestly, once we're in the team, we'll know a lot more. Compared to the information that the civilians have access to, the higher-ups definitely know more. And we don't have to spend much time. We just have to fight a little to ease the situation. At the same time, we can hang the title of rescuing the people from danger. With this title, even if our identities are suspicious, these higher-ups can't do anything to us. And we can also indirectly increase their favorability with us. By then, things will be much easier, right? All in all, while fighting, we can make a big commotion. The bigger the better. Yes, that's right. Yin Nuoxing. Although that's true, and I have such a plan, but after a while, he could not think of anything to say. After thinking for a while, he rolled his eyes and waved his hand. Forget it, no buts. You guys go. We'll walk around the city and see what's going on. If nothing happens, we'll meet up with you guys. Remember to keep in touch. Okay. Hui, Ning Fei, and the other 2 hot-blooded fellows responded loudly. They turned into 3 streaks of light and rushed to the west where the fierce battle was going on. In an instant, they blended into the background of the black clouds and were hard to find. Yin Nuoxing frowned and sighed in distress. She turned to the maidservants and shrugged. Let's go into the city. The 2 pillars, the Light Chaser Tower and the Great Shrine, were located exactly the same as in Boulder City. Even the distance between them was almost the same. It was as if they had deliberately arranged it this way. The importance of the Great Shrine could only be understood by making an appointment and walking around. It was not a troublesome matter, but one had to make an appointment and queue up. Before they left Boulder City, they learned that to enter the Great Shrine, they had to wait for 30 days. Moreover, they could only go to the Great Shrine in the city where they had made an appointment. This was a bit of a pain in the ass. It was very unfriendly for them who had to travel around the world. Before they could determine where they would be staying for a long time, they could only look at the Great Shrine and ignore the Great Shrine. The 1,000-book pagoda was also located near the Light Chaser Tower. It did not take much effort to find the middle and upper parts of the pagoda. Just as Ning Fei and the others said, the 1,000-book pagoda did not have any restrictions. Anyone could enter if they wanted to. At this time, the pagoda was empty. There were only countless books and purifying magic stones. The purple energy crystals could be used as currency or as a daily energy source. Many things in this world use the purifying magic stones as an energy source. He had just learned the name of this item. It seemed that the purifying magic stones also had the function of storing information. It did not take much effort to figure out how to use it. It did not require one's spirit or soul to read it. Instead, it used one's consciousness to obtain it. The 7 of them quickly explored the interior of the pagoda. However, the information, there's nothing at all. So you put down the purifying magic stone that was the size of a palm and turned a little star. It's still the same information about the 3 major regions. It hasn't changed at all. It feels a little strange. Yin Nuoxing nodded at her. He turned to look at the purifying magic stone in front of him and frowned. If from the beginning, the information about the 3 major regions was only the information about the 3 major regions. That is to say, the 3 regions were trapped here by the Chaos Devil Wasteland from the beginning. It seems like they were trapped in the center of the island. The information about Thousand Ridge City was completely cut off 90,000 years ago. The map still has the mark of this city. This is because the expansion of the Chaos Devil Wasteland's subsequent activities separated the 2 places. It makes sense. Yin Nuoxing looked up and muttered to himself. But if that's the case, where did the saying of 7 major regions, 12 major regions, and 20 major cities come from? Sui Qing walked to his side and took out a book from the bookshelf next to him. She replied softly, "Perhaps this world once had a way to communicate regardless of distance, just like our soul communication. But later on, even this method disappeared with the erosion of time. That's not very likely, since there was already a connection with the other regions that had been isolated from the beginning. There should be information about it. In a world with enough high-level life forms, there is no such thing as the so-called intergenerational gap." Yin Nuoxing's expression changed as he spoke. His face instantly welcomed an earthquake. Sui Qing's blue starry eyes glanced at him and continued what he wanted to say. Unless the life in this world had experienced intergenerational gap, a forced intergenerational gap caused by the chaos devil wasteland and the demonized life forms, not intergenerational gap caused by the passage of time. They might have gone extinct once, or perhaps many times. Looking from this direction, the intergenerational gap of information and information is not something incomprehensible. And in the intergenerational gap, there should be some fragments that are barely preserved. After all, it's not a world-destroying event. It's just the intergenerational gap of life. If that's the case, Yin Nuoxing swung his hand and threw the mana cleansing stone that stored the information on the shelf. He frowned and sighed. Then it's really not that fun. Meaningless consumption and meaningless battles were not a good thing in the first place. It was the same for the outside world as well. The meaningless internal strife within the void of order was purely consuming the power of order. Sorry, but they could only consider this from the perspective of the bigger picture of the void. After all, they had been driven mad by the mess between order and chaos. Now, they only wished to see the entire void twisting into a single entity, so that they could accumulate as much power as they could to fight against the underworld and chaos. What? His resentment? Yes, he was a little sick and had a lot of resentment. But if he did not care about it, nothing would happen for the time being. Why would he go crazy for no reason? He was oversensitive and crazy, but he was not mentally ill. He wanted to tear apart the void of order, and he wanted to unite the void of order into one force. These two things did not conflict at all. If the void of order really wanted to unite into one force, he would not bother them, even if he had to pinch his nose and stab himself twice. The problem was that the void of order could not unite into one force. It was pardonable that they could not unite into one force. After all, this was a war. It could be big or small. There were a lot of things that could be said about whether they were willing or not. But if the void of order did not unite into one force, then it was fine if the void of order just quietly stayed at the back and watched over the back garden. No, if they insisted on stirring up trouble, then he would stab himself twice. Sui Qing waved her hand and poked his face that was twisted into a walnut shape. "Wake up! Blue Phoenix is calling for you." Yin Nuoxing shuddered and came back to his senses. He saw that Blue Phoenix could not wait to run over to him after staring at him for a long time without any reaction. He laughed dryly. Oh, you're awake." Sui Qing tilted her head and looked into his eyes. "What were you thinking about just now?" I was thinking about stabbing myself and stabbing others twice." Sui Qing was speechless. Logically speaking, she felt that it would be better not to delve into it. "Little star, look at this." Seeing that he had come back to his senses, Blue Phoenix directly placed the book in her hand in front of him. "This is information that you have not read before." Yin Nuoxing and Sui Qing gathered together to read the book. Then, they read it in unison. "Light Chaser? It seems to be a type of puppet used for battle." Blue Phoenix nodded slightly. Her eyes were still scanning the book. "It mentions the words mass and generation. If I'm not wrong, it might be the path of energy derivatives of order?" When Yin Nuoxing said this, he turned to look at Sui Qing. Sui Qing happened to turn her head as well. Their eyes were only a few inches apart. However, he did not mind at all. He just moved a little to the side. Sui Qing nodded slightly. "From this simple introduction, we can preliminarily determine that it is an energy derivative. This type of energy derivative used for battle seems to have the power of consciousness as its core and energy and rules as auxiliary." The power of consciousness. Yin Nuashing tugged at his bangs. It's a little unorthodox. I also rarely use the power of consciousness. The strength of this type of energy derivative, well, it's probably not very easy to determine. This is only a general introduction. Sui Qing nodded. To determine this, one would either have to come into contact with it personally or know its composition. The origin of the structure, the core of the structure, and the rules of the structure. Obviously, such important things would not be placed carelessly in a place where anyone could come in. The records in the book are just a simple introduction. It's just like a story. The important things are not mentioned in detail. Even the appearance is only described as a humanoid form of consciousness. I don't know what it looks like. Blue Phoenix flipped a few pages of the book. After reading for a while, she gently closed the book. Her crimson eyes met his gaze. Little Star, I have an idea. Oh, coincidentally, I have one too. Yin Nuashing smiled faintly and patted her head. He shouted to the other girls. Is there anything else? If not, it's almost time for us to leave. There's nothing fun. Siyu replied immediately. She threw down the magic cleansing stone in her hand and returned to his side. Her pretty face was gloomy. From humanities to geography to astronomical phenomena, I've read it back and forth a dozen times. There's nothing fun. Yin Nuashing was startled. Why do you focus on this? Siyu suddenly coughed softly. She raised her right hand and made a gesture with her right palm. With a calm expression, she said in an old and experienced tone, "This old man observes the stars at night and calculates with his fingers. Today, a strange phenomenon will descend from the heavens somewhere. The red moon will be in the sky, and the stars will be hidden. It's a sign of great calamity." Everyone was speechless. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment, then used both hands to rub the cheeks of this mischievous girl for a while. On the western and southern city walls of Abyss Moon City, Yin Nuashing and the others ran to this place. They could only see the overwhelming number of demonized creatures. Their size ranged from 10 feet to 100 miles. It was like an army equipped with all kinds of soldiers. The vast negative energy gushing out was so dense that it could be cast into an airtight black wall. With such numbers and power, they were about 1/3 more than the current strength of Abyss Moon City. In fact, they only needed a commander to put on their brains and let them exert their power to the extreme to flatten Abyss Moon City. After all, for such things, brains and power could not be combined. Even the concept body of chaos could not avoid this situation. Hiss, this scene is really, it's been a long time. When Yin Nuashing saw the dense black and slightly violent scene, her brain suddenly twitched. She was so nervous that she almost took out the rhythm of light. This scene is no different from the Tide of Darkness, except that it is not the power of chaos. Everything else is similar. There was a little distance between the city walls and the largest area of the barrier. Standing there was not considered to be in the battle range. It was considered a safe distance. However, such a dark, polluted, and hazy scene was nothing to look at. Looking at such a scene would only make people feel depressed and nervous. It was better to go home and rest. Therefore, there was no one on the city walls. At the same time, it could also be seen that they were war crazy. If they were not careful, they might rush up and destroy the entire area in front of them. Near the barrier was where the defensive forces of Abyssal Moon City were gathered. Countless fleets of ships were lined up around the barrier of the Light Chaser Tower. The 1,000-mile-long ships acted as energy nodes, and there was one at a certain distance. The ships of other sizes were also spread out densely, connecting with each other through energy to form a transparent golden net. The attacks that blanketed the sky and earth were launched by the warriors standing on them, and the indiscriminate bombardment was no less than that caused by the demonized life forms. And in that battlefield, there was another group of equally eye-catching figures. Millions of white radiant silhouettes stood in an orderly fashion in the great net constructed between the ships. Surging energies were bursting out endlessly from their bodies, incessantly unleashing thunderbolts, flame pillars, energy torrents, and other pure energy attacks that could easily penetrate the army of demonized creatures and cause a second burst of energy at the heart of the army. The remaining energy was released all at once and blasted a hole in the clouds. Their combined power was no less than that of the entire fleet. Those are the ones. Sui Qing spoke softly, drawing everyone's attention to those white radiant silhouettes. Light chasers, energy spawns with consciousness as their core. They have so many ways to attack. Siyu's gaze quickly swept across the entire battlefield. The light chasers' attacks alone account for half of them. Lightning flashes, thunder rumbles, heaven collapses, earth shattering, water flooding, and fire fanning. They seem to be proficient in everything. The birth of energy spawns is related to their origin. Similar combat techniques and abilities are already present from birth, and the attacks they use only depend on whether their creator has given them any. As long as it is given, they would be able to use it. That is the strength of energy spawns. Moreover, they can coordinate with the energy of other energy creations to attack and defend. Such energy spawns are considered passable if they can do that, and the only thing left is their strength. As Xiao Shi spoke, she suddenly remembered the topic they had mentioned before. Still, countering chaos corruption is still a problem. They don't have it, and this world doesn't need that power. Yin Nuoxing was silent for a moment before she could not help asking, "You're saying that the white radiant person in profound Heaven City is a light chaser as well?" It's hard to say. Xiao Shi's gray eyes suddenly flickered with purple gold specks of light as she looked at the white radiant silhouettes. This light chaser is different from the one we saw in profound Heaven City in terms of appearance and structure. If it is a light chaser as well, it could only be a superior entity of a higher level. Yin Nuoxing's pretty face immediately scrunched up like a bitter gourd. It couldn't have escaped from here, could it? It feels like there's another mystery. After all, if the creations of the primordial realm could have been brought out from here, then it was not impossible for a light chaser to escape from here. Apart from the fleet and the army of light chasers, there were many others moving freely on the battlefield, fighting wherever they wanted. There were quite a number of them as well, and this should be the unaffiliated individuals that the pirate captain had mentioned. There were probably unaffiliated individuals who stayed in Abyss Moon City and did not join the army, but they could only take on demonized life forms other than great demons and chaos demons. Their combat ability had yet to reach the level where they could directly kill great demons. Standing on the city wall, Siyu stood on one leg and stretched her neck to look into the distance. Where are Lord Hui and the others? Yin Nuoxing's face twitched at the mention of Hui and the others. After a moment of hesitation, she covered her face and turned to the side, before pointing at a place near the west gate. "Well, look inside from here. Keep looking inside. Look as hard as you can, and you will see them." Hearing his strange tone and the place he was pointing at, they all hesitated for 2 seconds, but they still couldn't help but glance at the depths of that direction out of curiosity. Their gazes passed through the walls made of layers of negative energy, and they kept striding forward until they were hundreds of thousands of miles deep into the hinterland. Then they saw 3 vast and spreading energy storms. They sensed the familiar aura, and they opened the soul communication. "Grandson, come and hit me. Come, smash it down on this master's head. Over here. Over here. Ha 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 ha. Woola. Ning Fei, I'll leave the left side to you. Don't come over here. Woola. Take it easy. Take it easy. I am accumulating energy here. Don't affect us. Otherwise, the big explosion we agreed on will be turned into soup." The girls were speechless. They knew why the observer covered her face and didn't know what expression to make. This was not the extent of not causing a big commotion. This was them becoming the biggest commotion, going deep into the hinterland to eliminate the demonized creatures, slapping a bunch of great demons to death, and accumulating energy to make a big explosion. It would not take long for the people in Abyss Moon City to discover the abnormality. They would probably first discover that the number of demonized creatures had plummeted, and then suddenly there would be a loud explosion in the sky. How exciting! Yin Nuoxing looked at it and turned her head with a whoosh. Her hands were clenched tightly, and there was an evil smile on her face. She gathered the rhythm of light in her right hand and clenched it tightly. The energy surged wildly. Ah, I will join in too. Seeing them fight so happily, a little angel quickly leaned on his back and hugged him tightly with her arms. She wrapped him tightly with her wings and said softly, "No, you can't." Siyu took the opportunity to pinch Little Star's face a few times. Master Hui and the others are strategic weapons, but Little Star is a void-level disaster. You can't mess around. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Was he not even a weapon now? Shouldn't a walking void-level disaster be a joke? Shuang Shuang pinched his nose and blew a cold wind on his face. She said softly, "The main thing is that Little Star used the rhythm of light at the beginning. Who knows what will happen if we let you out? Among the people here, only everyone can withstand the power of the 3 styles of nothingness that you released." As everyone knows, when Little Star picks up the Nether Void Sword and the Rhythm of Light, he basically has to use all his strength. Ding, 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 this area will sink. Yin Nuashing, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm a walking disaster. I won't fight anymore. Well, it was one thing to say it verbally, but she could not let her guard down even for a moment. After all, this guy could roar to encourage himself when he was fighting insects on the battlefield outside, but after a while, he would lose control and begin to gather his strength. Ding, not only would Abyss Moon City explode, even Boulder City would be able to see the fireworks here. If he was a little more ruthless, Boulder City would sink. Although this was the result of him being overly focused and using all his strength in the battle, and it was almost inevitable, but there was no need for him to fight with all his strength. If he fought with all his strength, he could tear down this place. Therefore, she could only hold him down and not let him fight unless it was absolutely necessary. Oh, there's someone else in this place too? The sudden voice made them subconsciously turn their heads. They saw a girl with long gray hair that reached her waist. She had a smile on her face, and her green eyes were slightly curved, making her look very cute and playful. She was wearing a rather grand-looking white and gray outfit, and a white cloak with a high slit that looked like 2 long ribbons hanging from it. She had her hands behind her back and was slightly bent over. Her green eyes were glowing as she looked at them with a smile that could not be concealed. Her smiling eyes released an unconcealable kindness. Are you here to enjoy the scenery too? Scenery? Yin Nuashing and the others turned their heads to look outside the city wall. The mighty energy impact whistled through the entire sky, and the rumbling sound resounded through the clouds. It was as if someone was holding a hammer and a gong and knocking on their ears, and their heads were buzzing. The earth trembled under the frequent energy impact, and the energy flames did not stop surging, rolling up stormy waves and fighting with the sea of clouds. The negative energy with the violent power of oppressing the world continued to impact the defense line of Abyss Moon City. The barrier trembled violently, and huge ripples splashed out. The roars, shouts, and roars of countless people mixed with the energy explosion of the fleet, subconsciously launching attacks again and again. Their consciousness was about to be muddled. Is this a scenery? The Void front line must be the most magnificent and solemn scenery in the entire Void of Order, right? It's here. Siyu suddenly shouted excitedly, causing the 8 people present to be startled. They all looked at her in unison. The green-eyed, gray-haired girl was also slightly startled, but the smile on her face did not diminish. What appeared? Tour guide. Siyu inexplicably activated her innate talent of befriending people. She smiled and pounced on the confused girl. Are you here for a walk too? Yin Nuashing could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. He had only mentioned the tour guide a few times, and this girl was already thinking about it. As everyone knew, when they arrived in a new world, the people they met who were interested in them and came up to them to chat would have a high probability of becoming the tour guide for the next long journey. Although he didn't know why such a large group of people would attract her interest, it was the truth. Looking at the girl's sparkling eyes staring at them nonstop and chatting with Siyu, he knew that she was very interested. Moreover, If a normal person saw CU's crazy and friendly attitude, they would probably take 2 or 3 steps back. You guys are from Boulder City. The girl's crisp voice sounded with a smile. Yin Nuashing and the others had just ended their eye contact and turned their heads to see the girl with gray hair slowly walking towards them. CU was so familiar with her that she could pull her arm and shake it lightly. Conservatively speaking, the girl had already asked about the girl's interests, hobbies, names, where she lived, what she did, why she was here, and so on. When she pulled the girl in front of her, CU looked at Little Star and said, "Her name is Lu Xiaoqiu. I think her family gave her this name casually." Yin Nuashing and the others were speechless. Well, they underestimated the girl's ability. She had already dug out the dark history of the girl's life after meeting her for 3 minutes. The gray-haired girl, who was casually named Lu Xiaoqiu, covered her mouth and smiled shyly. She put on a slightly serious face, but there was still a smile on her pretty face. "I heard from CU that you guys came here from Boulder City to help protect Abyss Moon City. Now you're struggling to find a way." Although he didn't know what CU had said during the conversation, it seemed that she wanted to use the tour guide's power to push forward the matter at hand. Hui and the others were stirring up trouble over there. If they didn't contact the people here and rashly blew up the entire battlefield, it would indeed cause some unnecessary panic. Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing looked at her and nodded lightly. There are some things that need to be reported after all. Acting rashly may disrupt the original plan of Abyss Moon City. It is not easy to cooperate. It is important to communicate in advance. "I see. Very thoughtful." The girl nodded seriously. "But you don't have to worry. Abyss Moon City doesn't have any plans at this time. If you want to fight, just go ahead. There are no restrictions here. Well, no, it's better to say that if you have any good plans, you can tell us. After we judge that it is a valuable action, we can cooperate." Hearing this, anyone could tell that this girl's origin might not be ordinary. Well, if it was an ordinary person, they would not see the scene on their left as scenery. "Hey," CU suddenly let out a long response and looked at her curiously. "Is your family a high-ranking member of Abyss Moon City? For example, your father is the city lord? Or your grandfather is the city lord?" "No." The girl shook her head lightly and looked at them with her hands behind her back with a smile, which made CU and the others a little stunned. Just as they were secretly guessing, the girl chuckled and revealed the answer. "My father is the lord of the Great Temple. He is also in charge of the Battle of Abyss Moon City." Everyone, huh? Chapter 1975. She responded as if she was having a normal meal. Whether it was in the face of the war or when she introduced herself, her tone was the same, habitually indifferent. But that was indeed the case. Abyss Moon City had been fighting nonstop for 17 years. As the family member of the supreme commander of this war, she was already used to it and was familiar with it in every aspect, including the others who were familiar with her. It was no wonder that she sounded a little familiar. Oh yes, there was also a sense of perfunctory feeling. She had probably repeated this many times in the past 17 years. Just like a guide on the battlefield, there were also a lot of similar people in the Void frontline. After all, there would also be newcomers there. The existence of similar guides and guides was necessary. Newcomers always needed a little guidance. Oh, I see. So when she saw them wandering around the city wall, she came over to guide them. She must have seen too many similar people. By the way, if you want to talk about a plan, we do have one now. After clarifying the matter, Yin Nuashing did not delay any longer. She was afraid that Hui and Ning Fei would set the entire area on fire if they delayed for another 2 minutes. No. Rather than a plan, it's better to call an operation. Although it can't guarantee that it will solve the current situation of Abyss Moon City, it will make the situation, well, it will make the attack of the demonized creatures weaken a lot. That's the worst-case scenario. Hurry up and think of a way to get them involved. If not, they would find out first. She told Lu Xiaoqiu that Hui and the others were stirring up trouble in the depths of the Chaos Demon Wilderness outside the West Gate. The latter's expression changed as she listened. "You sent people deep into the Chaos Demon Wilderness?" That surprised them. They did not expect that she was not surprised by the impending explosion and chaos, but was shocked that they had sent people into the chaos demon wilderness. Is there anything wrong? Yin Nuashing tilted her head when she saw the drastic change in the gray-haired girl's expression. If you're worried about our combat strength, you don't have to. Those three fellows are more than capable of killing their way in and out 3,000 times. To tell you the truth, we've always been doing this. The girls nodded vigorously. For example, rushing here and there in front of the abyssal death fog, carrying nodes and energy towers to block them in front of the big crack and bombarding them indiscriminately, rushing into the depths of the abyssal death fog, alone and fighting. Hiss, I knew it. They must have been influenced by him. Even had learned to use Peerless. In any case, he could come and go as he pleased in the abyssal death fog. It was not a big deal to go in and out of the chaos devil wilderness. Lu Xiaoqiu was a little confused when she saw them nodding their heads in unison without any worry. Out of kindness, she still reminded them, going deep into the chaotic devil wilderness, the berserk level of the demonized life forms will increase by several levels. I have never heard of anyone being able to escape unscathed after going deep into the chaotic devil wilderness, let alone only 3 people. Well, you've heard it now. Yin Nuashing smiled faintly and hurriedly glanced at the depths of the chaotic devil wilderness. When she saw that the energy storm there had gathered to a certain scale, the smile on her face froze at once, and even her tone became a little hurried. It's fine if you don't believe us. I'm sure you have a way to look in that direction. It's deep into the chaotic devil wilderness, and you'll believe me when you see it. Hurry up, they can't hold back anymore. The gray-haired girl looked deeply at the group, the smile on her face fading slightly. After a moment, she turned gently and said softly, "Please come with me." The party followed the girl to the largest ship in the Abyss Moon City's defensive line. Countless explosions that contained energy and ruled destruction blasted into their ears at once, leaving Yin Nuashing and the others shuddering. It was quiet on the city walls just now, perhaps due to some soundproof measures, but they did not expect it to be so noisy when they arrived at the scene. The noise pollution was definitely much greater than the void front line. Please wait here for a moment. After leaving the sentence, the girl hurriedly walked towards the building that looked like a pestle on the ship in front of her. The appearance of the building looked a bit like the turret on the second floor of the Great Shrine, but the turret on this ship was very large, majestic, and magnificent. It was much larger than the Great Shrine in the city, and there were constantly astonishing energy reactions coming from inside. They subconsciously glanced at it, labeled it as the core, and ignored it. Although they could take a thorough look at it, see where the energy came from, look at the structure of the ship, and see if there were any unnecessary things. Well, after all, they were in someone else's territory. They did not know if there were any restrictions, so they would not be so presumptuous for the time being. On the side of the large ship near the energy barrier, there were 2 rows of warriors standing in a row. All of them were wearing a set of white, luxurious, and simple robes and a square hat on their heads. It was the attire of the gatekeeper who refused to let them in. They should be warriors of the Great Shrine. They were all holding various types of energy creations in their hands. One of them was something they had seen before. It looked like a ball with a hedgehog ring around it. Yes, it was the one that the Primordial World team was holding when they challenged them. This already confirmed that the creations of the Primordial World came from this place. Their sudden appearance made some of these warriors turn their heads curiously to look at them, but they only looked at them for a while before turning their gazes back. They continued to pour energy out of the barrier with a straight face. They were already used to people coming here. There were all kinds of large and small airships of various styles and countless energy creations. It could be seen that they were pieced together. It was as if they had exhausted all the power they could use to pull up this army to resist the demonized creatures from the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Whether it was the power used by the real army or the militia-level power, they were all dragged to this line of defense. There were even more than a dozen symbols. Oh, the last one could be explained. The people who occupied the most symbols should belong to the people of Abyss Moon City. The other symbols should be the forces mobilized from the surrounding cities to assist in the defense, as the captain said. Either way, the formation looked impressive. From afar, the net was connected neatly and without any sense of disharmony. Taking a closer look, it turned out that the troops were lined up neatly. There was no such thing as uniformity in the things that were placed here. It was rather like a group of hooligans huddled together, picking up wooden sticks, bricks, steel rods, steel plates, tables, chairs, and benches as they huddled together to fight. Come to think of it, looking at the dense fleet that was probably millions of ships floating in the air, he had the illusion that there should be an ocean nearby. He did not know if the black negative energy that blanketed the sky before him could count as an ocean. Even so, they had seen such a scene countless times in the void front lines over countless years. However, perhaps because they were in the void, the dark void did not have any meaningful reference. The shock and visual impact of the abyssal death shroud was far less than the black shroud in the real world. Before they could study the ship for more than a minute, a sharp shriek of energy suddenly echoed across the entire defensive perimeter. Perhaps because there had been no changes all this while, the sudden sound left everyone stunned for a moment, and it was only after a few seconds that they responded to the sound. It was probably some sort of order, and the fleet that was arranged here shifted. The ships that were thousands of miles long, like fortresses and nodes, began to unleash even greater energy and pressed forward towards the barrier ahead. Millions of light chasers returned to the larger ships in a flicker, while the densely packed smaller ships began to retreat rapidly, shrinking behind the fortresses in an orderly manner. All of their energies were also converging on the ships at the forefront through the energy web, while the light chasers themselves were in charge of shrinking behind the fortresses, shuddering like a mimosa plant that was poked and hurriedly shrinking. Hey, Maple, how's it going on over there? Have you prepared any grand welcoming ceremony? We're going to set off the fireworks once you're ready. Huey's voice that rang through the soul communication took him 2 seconds to react before he understood with an O. He finally understood why the fleet had suddenly holed up and entered a defensive stance. It seems that they had observed the wildly surging energy in the chaos wasteland and had also assumed a defensive stance based on the conjecture of that gathering energy. Why does something feel off? How much energy have you gathered? Yinuashing could not help but ask. Not much. It's just a full-powered blow from a beginner premier pinnacle. It's definitely powerful enough, and we've followed your meticulous teachings to expand the range to a considerable extent. That's definitely enough to blow a crater out of the chaos wasteland. How big is the range? You're not really thinking of setting off fireworks in Abyss Moon City, are you? TCH, not really, definitely not. Huey's indifferent voice paused for a moment, and then he laughed dryly. Maybe the range is a little too big. Maybe it will affect the barrier of the light-chasing tower. Can you support the defense? Yinuashing and the others. F*CK. This shield ran out to set off fireworks, and now he wants them to support the shield. The moment he opened his mouth, he might collapse the barrier of Abyss Moon City. No wonder the fleet hurriedly adjusted their formation and entered a defensive state. They had sensed a life-and-death crisis and hurriedly huddled together to defend with all their might. Otherwise, they would be buried together with the countless demonized creatures outside. At this moment, even the people standing on the side of the ship stopped attacking and took out another kind of energy creation. It looked like a miniature version of a light-chasing tower. They adjusted on the side of the ship for a while and released a huge amount of energy to strengthen the ship's defense. Then, they quickly lay down. They did not dare to stand for a moment longer. You have to be ready. We're lighting the fire. Ningfei, lighting the fire. 5, 2, 1. Yinuashing was shocked. If you're counting down, then do it properly, you idiot. Are you in a hurry to be reincarnated? Less than 2 seconds after they hurriedly strengthened this thin layer of energy barrier, a cross-shaped star-like flash suddenly flashed in the deep dark scene. The moment the flash disappeared, a majestic and mighty energy suddenly rushed into everyone's senses and attracted the attention of all the demonized creatures in front of the barrier. No matter what size the demonized creatures were, they all turned their heads at this moment. Then, the whole world froze in this scene. There was no telling whether it was a hum, a boom, or a quang, but the entire battlefield suddenly exploded. The world was completely occupied by the white light. In everyone's eyes, it seemed that the entire battlefield had inexplicably burst out of nowhere, igniting the most magnificent and violent fireworks in the world, covering everyone's vision with a layer of white cloth. The energy storm that gathered and erupted only lasted for a short moment before it was torn apart from the inside by an even more violent energy impact. A dazzling white light soared into the sky from a very distant place. The shock wave that swept over first had crushed all the demonized creatures in sight into ashes. The indiscriminate destructive energy collided with the energy barrier of Abyss Moon City, causing the latter to shake violently. It looked like the space had been overlapped and distorted more than a dozen times and flickered frequently. Even the two energy rings flickered and were on the verge of collapse. This barrier that had defended against the attacks of the demonized creatures for 17 years had been extinguished before a more powerful energy impact arrived. There was definitely something wrong with the strength of this attack. Logically speaking, it should have been enough to use only the power of energy and the power of laws. It was unknown if the three of them were deliberately causing trouble. Not only did they use the power of beginner Yuanshi, they even used the power of order. This caused the power of the energy explosion to be raised to another level. They were afraid that they would not be able to blow up this area. However, a few seconds later, endless energy wrapped in a vast white light arrived unexpectedly. The impact that contained all the remaining energy was like a blooming star that swallowed the entire Abyss Moon City. The area within a radius of at least 10 million kilometers was immersed in a frenzy of heaven and earth. The earth was like a seesaw, swaying up and down, almost breaking itself apart. When the storm passed, the three bastards still had some sense of propriety. They did not bombard the land for half an hour, nor did they explode in 2, 3, 4, or 5 waves. The energy explosion lasted for more than 10 seconds before dissipating. The light and the remaining energy dissipated like a broken soap bubble, covering the blue and clear sky again. Yin Nuashing pushed away the pair of wings covering her eyes, looked up at the surroundings, and breathed a sigh of relief. The ground was only scraped a few layers, and there was no big hole. This was good news. But what about the bad news? The energy blast just now covered the entire Abyss Moon City. At this moment, there was no intact land within a radius of 10 million miles. There were cracks and collapses. Fortunately, they had just protected the entire Abyss Moon City. Other than 2 bricks that were destroyed by the wind, no other place was damaged. Otherwise, he would have already run away with a group of girls. Then again, after the explosion of energy, the entire battlefield was so clean that not a single cloud could be seen. There was only the sky in all directions, and not a single trace of negative energy could be seen. There were no remnants of demonized life forms, and not a single piece of magic crystal was left. The fleet that had just shrunk within the barrier showed signs of splitting apart. The large ships were blown dozens of meters away by the storm, and the smaller ships behind were even more agitated. They collided with each other like marbles, and if it weren't for them holding up the energy barrier, they would have been smashed into a large pile of wreckage and were undergoing deep fusion. Then, he had to quickly grab the people and run. He couldn't afford to pay for it. Oh my! Cough, 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 cough. I mean, this is a very powerful attack. Yin Nuashing and the others turned their heads when they heard a large group of gasping sounds coming from behind them. They saw a large group of people who didn't look like ordinary people hurriedly running out of the turret-like building and standing on the deck to scan the surroundings. Their faces were all shaken to the point that they were almost swollen. The young girl, whose name had been given casually for her entire life, was also among them. The smile on her face had already frozen to a lifeless degree. She looked around at the ground that had been ruthlessly destroyed, and when she turned her gaze back to them, she no longer knew what kind of expression she should put on. Next to her was a middle-aged man in a luxurious and simple white robe inlaid with gold. His hair was a little pale, and his face was thin and weather-beaten. Although he tried his best to keep a calm expression, it was still obvious that he was a little haggard. In addition, he had just shouted shocking words. In their first impression, he no longer had the so-called dignity and stability. As for haggard, how could they not be haggard after fighting for 17 years without a moment's rest? They had been fighting in the void front line all the time, and when they retreated, they were as tired as dogs. They wished they could lie in bed and sleep forever. The middle-aged man was stared at for a while before he recovered from the excessive shock. He walked in front of them with Lu Xiaoqiu and nodded slightly to them. I am Lu Yin, the lord of the great shrine of Abyss Moon City. I am also the supreme commander of this side's defense line. Thank you for your help in this battle. With our strength alone, I am afraid I don't know when it will end. He suddenly jumped out and looked at the father and daughter. She said softly, in short, that attack just now consumed 2,000 of our largest magic stones. Can you help us replenish some of them? Lu Yin and his daughter were speechless. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly pulled back the girl who made up excuses to extort them. Just as he was about to say something, 3 figures with distorted light suddenly descended a few meters beside them. The 3 people who set the mountain on fire rushed out of the light at the right time. We even laughed happily at them. We are back. Fong! Was the explosion just now exciting? Was it fun? Yin Nuoxing instantly understood that this bastard was doing this on purpose. He had been bombarded as a shield all day long. This time, he had to use him as a shield and blow him up once. If there wasn't someone else at the moment, he would have immediately pressed him into the void and bombarded him with a round of saturation bombardment. Seeing that Maple intended to scrape him with his murderous eyes, Hui was so happy that his face bloomed. Then, he turned his head and rushed over to grab the middle-aged man's hand and shook it vigorously. Hello, my name is Hui. The pit next to us is the one we just blew up. It was the first time he had to introduce himself to the pit they just blew up. There was no telling how much pressure Hui must have accumulated for being a shield. Well, Hui and the others were back. Since they could handle the conversation, he quietly slipped to the side to see what the chaos wasteland looked like. It was a good idea, but he did not slip away. He was being stared at, but not by his own girls, by a light chaser who had been standing at the side since the beginning. Although it had no face, consciousness, or energy flow, he could feel that it was extending its attention to him. He deliberately moved to the side, and its head turned a little as well. He circled it twice, and it turned twice as well. Yin Nuoxing could not stand being stared at, and could not help but walk up to it and stare at its all-shaped face. Do you need something from me? The baffling light chaser was taken aback for a moment. That weak movement made it feel as if it was a little more agile than the energy spawns in the battle just now, just that it appeared to be a little more intelligent. It was probably a superior entity, Joshua thought. You seem to be looking for something? It looked at him for a while and slowly opened its mouth. It spoke directly and did not use its consciousness or energy to convey its message to him, which made him slightly stunned. Its voice was very light and floaty. Well, it sounded like it was using energy to make a sound, but the pitch was very low. It sounded very strange. Yin Nuoxing looked at it for a while and did not know how to say it. This was not something that needed to be hidden. After all, they in Shuang did not know where the thing they were looking for was. They did not say anything purely because they did not know how to describe it. They could not possibly tell others, we are looking for something, but we don't know what it is at the moment. Anyway, this thing is here. It could be a stone, it could be a tree, or it could be something else that looked like a stone. In short, it was something. The other party was already being merciful by not treating him as a lunatic and locking him up. He thought about it for a long time, and based on his experience as an outsider in other worlds, he replied, we are looking for anomalies in the chaos wastelands. Do you have any special ideas? The white silhouette that was temporarily treated as a superior light chaser lowered its head and thought for a moment before shaking its head. The Chaos Wastelands. Everything that was once recorded has completely disappeared after the repeated annihilations. Less than 1/10 of the Chaos Wastelands have been explored in the reorganized world, and I could not find out what the anomalies you speak of are from the 1/10 that we have. Yin Nuashing was already grimacing inwardly. He did not expect to verify the idea that this world had been destroyed and lost generations so quickly. Still, he did his best to remain indifferent on the surface, even showing some doubt as he tilted his head. He was not particularly clear about the extent of the loss of generations in this world. Completely disappeared. Is it something similar to the loss of generations? I think I've heard of it before. You must have accidentally heard some of the remnant information. Even if the generation was cut off, it didn't completely disappear. It's normal for there to be remnants. In fact, only about 5% of the known information of the previous generation is left. The rest are just fragments. Not many people know about this part of the information. I see. Yin Nuashing made an O sound as he crossed his arms and swayed his right hand gently. But I still want to know about the Chaos Wastelands. Or rather, about some strange places. It mimicked him and tilted its head. Why are you so obsessed with the Chaos Wastelands? The meaning of strange places is unclear, and there's no way to tell. You need more details. Because I'm looking for something. Maybe it's something related to, something related to the previous generation. I'm not sure, although as the person involved. Yin Nuashing glanced at Shuang, who was listening to something over there. He stuttered for a while and vaguely skipped the middle of the sentence. But I really don't understand. After all, the person involved is also a fool. It also followed his gaze and fell on Shuang. After looking at her for a while, it turned back and looked at him. The purpose is unclear, the meaning is unclear, and I can't give too much advice. However, if it's something related to the previous generation, most of it is indeed related to the Chaos Wastelands. The traces of its existence have been covered by the wastelands and hidden under the traces of destruction. The past you are looking for is the same. They may exist in the most dangerous place of the Chaos Wastelands at this time, which is the most prosperous place of the previous generation. This is the advice I can give. If it's you, maybe you can uncover the buried history and let it see the light of day again. The most prosperous place. Yin Nuashing pulled his hair. Seeing that it didn't answer directly, it thought that part of the most prosperous place of the previous generation had been covered under the Chaos Wastelands. It seemed that they needed to find it themselves. It didn't know if the 5% of the information would have this part of the information. Yin Nuashing nodded to it and chuckled. In any case, thank you for telling me this. Feng, what are you laughing at? Hui and the others seemed to have finished their conversation. They brought their people and walked towards him. Yin Nuashing turned around and looked at everyone. He stretched out his hand and gestured to it. No, I asked it something and got some information. The next action is a little promising. Huh? Hui and the others were stunned, including Lu Xiaoqiu and Lu Yin, who were walking over. Everyone looked at the direction where it gestured, but couldn't see anything for a long time. Lu Xiaoqiu couldn't help but ask, "Are you sleepy? Why are you pointing at the air and gesturing to us?" It was as if he had seen a ghost. The smile on Yin Nuashing's face froze at once. Its eyes widened, and it turned to look beside it. It stayed where it was expressionless and looked into his eyes for a while before turning to Hui and the others without saying a word. 7 or 8 ideas popped up in his mind in an instant. After some thought, Yin Nuashing decided to go with the quickest but not the most appropriate solution. He walked to its side and gestured at its surroundings with his hand, saying to Hui and the others, "This is the place. There's such a huge light chaser here. Can't you see it? Can't you see it?" Everyone rubbed their eyes hard and stared at the place he gestured in front of them. All of them frowned in suspicion and shook their heads. Hui and the others who were familiar with him didn't understand, but they still understood something in an instant. It should be his observer's trait that allowed him to catch something. This could be discussed later. As for the rest, everyone looked at Lu Yin and Yin Nuashing. All that was left was to see their reactions. Lu Yin saw Yin Nuashing gesturing in front of him as if something really existed there. He couldn't help but frown. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly raised his head and widened his eyes as if he had understood something. Could it be that you can catch the shadow of the past? Yin Nuashing tilted its head. What is it? Lu Yin was silent for a moment. Perhaps he believed something when he saw that Yin Nua was still gesturing there. He said in a low voice, "This world was forced by the expansion and changes of the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Hence, it was destroyed several times." Hui and the others were stunned and glanced at Maple at the same time. When they saw him wink in response, they understood. Hui tried to continue the topic. "I think I've heard of it before. After all, I've heard that there are other big areas besides these three big areas." "That's right." Lu Yin sighed dully and nodded. "The land we know now is merely a safe zone left behind after the last destruction. However, even we don't know the land beyond here, much less how vast this world is." He adjusted the hat on his head that probably had a special imprint and looked at the empty space beside Yin Nuashing. The shadow of the past is a kind of phenomenon formed by the fragments of consciousness left after countless lives perished during the last destruction. Phenomenon? Yin Nuashing had been gesturing around with her hand. At this moment, she thought for a moment and reached out to touch its shoulder. She touched it, but because she touched it, she was even more puzzled. Isn't it something that actually exists? Lu Yin shook his head lightly. Because the first few sightings were in places where the previous generation was suspected to have been destroyed and not occupied by the Chaos Devil Wilderness, some people determined that it was some kind of consciousness fragment related to the previous generation. Thus, there was this name and explanation. Until now, we have hundreds of sightings of the shadow of the past, but in fact, we don't know anything about it at all. In the existing sightings, most of the time, they will quickly disappear after being discovered. There are a few times when they didn't disappear, and some people try to contact or communicate with them, but they all failed. They seem to be a kind of phenomenon. They appear for no reason and disappear for no reason. Yin Nuashing looked in front of him and squeezed its shoulder. Well, its slender body was a little thin. Anyway, he couldn't understand the current situation. This shadow of the past did not disappear immediately. Secondly, it chatted with him for a while. Thirdly, it did not respond to his touch. Instead, it turned around and looked at him with its head tilted, as if it was very confused about his current actions. Everyone who had a tacit understanding with him saw his squirming movements and knew that he must be trying his best to harass it. Although they didn't know what the shadow of the past was, no matter how special it was, it couldn't escape the eyes of a certain observer. Moreover, he just talked to the air for a while and told them that he had found some information. It seemed that he had found some information through the shadow of the past. Yin Nuashing coughed and put down his evil right hand. He turned to Hui and said, "By the way, have you finished talking?" "Oh, we're done. We've also found a new direction here, but we have to stay in the city for a while." Hui nodded and pointed behind him at the ships that were blown into pieces by the wind in the final explosion. "I heard that the small ships are a little damaged and have to rest for a while. Did you guys not put up a good barrier in the end and let them be affected by the impact?" Everyone's cheeks twitched to the mention of this. At the same time, they turned their heads and saw that someone's face was even darker. He raised his hand and gathered a vast amount of energy. "You bastard! You said that it would only affect the vicinity of the barrier. In the end, the entire Abyss Moon City was pressed into the energy explosion. Whose fault is this? You idiot, stand still for me. Devour my Vientiane star." "Ugh." The little angel quickly rushed over and hugged him. She wrapped her wings and smiled softly at everyone who was in a defensive posture that would only be used in a moment of life and death. "Hold it down, everyone. Actually, sometimes it's okay not to hold him down." For example, at this moment, they were all prepared. Someone was also mentally prepared to be beaten up. However, seeing that someone's hands were hanging down as if he had stopped breathing, it seemed that he had drowned in the gentle village. There was no chance anymore. Chapter 1976. The war that had lasted for 17 years was messed up by a group of outsiders and ended with a destroyed land as the answer. After the people of Abyss Moon City repeatedly confirmed that the Chaos Wilderness had really calmed down, the city released cheers and joy after a long time. Although there's still many things to deal with, to clean up the mess, and to clean up everything that had become chaotic because of the emergency state of war, everything was not completely over before these things were really calmed down. But at least now they can indeed cheer. Although there might still be a long time before the end of the mess in this world. Maybe it would never end. The destruction might still happen. The end of the previous generation, the end of the generation before that, and the generation before that, was like evidence that the world was bound to fall. But these things did not need to be mentioned for the time being. After all, 99% of the people in this world did not know about these things, so there was no need to pay attention to it for the time being. Anyway, at this moment, there was a wave of cheers in Abyss Moon City. Well, the whole city was echoing with the sound of ghosts crying and howling. If one did not know better, they would have thought that something tragic had happened. Compared to cheering, it was more like crying and crying. The sound of crying and howling was much more than the sound of laughter. What was this called? It's so good to be able to party so excitedly after 17 years of war. Hui stood on the city wall with his elbows on the city wall. He held his chin with both hands and looked at the Abyss Moon City where the sound waves were higher and higher. He let out a long sigh of relief. He suddenly stood up straight and waved his hand forward. It's decided, when our battle comes to an end, we will also hold the grandest and most lively carnival in the entire void. Yin Nuoxing's face suddenly twitched, and she stared at him as if she had seen a ghost. Can you not talk about this when we were preparing for the final battle and during the war period? My liver trembled a little when I heard it. TSK, if it's a blessing, it's not a calamity. If it's a calamity, we can't avoid it. The war between order and chaos is just like what the heavenly God of origin above you said. This is the only result we can achieve right now. It's a result that we've exchanged for with everything we have. If it could be reversed with just a few words, wouldn't it be like child's play? Besides, the war between order and chaos. Would the void even dare to interfere? Yin Nuoxing sighed. He knew this better than anyone else. The clearer he knew, the more conflicted he felt. Because of this, he was forced into a corner step by step. Even though he had broken through the corner, he still continued to force himself. Knowing too much would make him very nervous. He stretched and moved his body. His whole body made cracking sounds. He stretched himself into a straight line and turned his head to look at Maple. By the way, are we going to take this world with us? I see that there are quite a few low-level primeval beginners. There is still some time left. Give them some time, and they will become decent fighters. The premise is that we have to figure out what this world is playing at. Yin Nuoxing yawned and said lazily, "It's sealing the void and space again." It seems that it's a seal caused by the lack of the concept of the rules. There's also the internal disconnection. I don't know how many times it has been disconnected. The area itself is ridiculously large, and the interior has been cut into many pieces by the Chaos Demon Wasteland. To be honest, my disaster warning is already screaming. My intuition tells me that something big is going to happen, but I don't know what kind of situation it will be. He paused for a moment and spread his hands. Of course, it's more likely that I'm just being paranoid. You know, I'm scared of going on a business trip. Now, when I take a breath, I feel like there are 1 or 200, no, 3 or 400, no, 5 or 600 things in the void staring at me as I write my report. We did not know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and patted Maple's shoulder. If you're scared, let's settle the matter with Shuang Shuang and return to the front line of the void. There's nothing to be afraid of when we get back. By the way, where are the girls in your family? I don't know where Ning Fei and the rest have gone. So you brought them to the city to play. The North City was the first to cheer and set up a food street. If I'm not mistaken, they should have gone there. Of course, they might have gone to the clothing street in the East City. Blue Phoenix said that she felt that the style of clothing in this world was quite good. She likes cloaks with high slits. That's not the cloak that the Great Shrine's combat personnel use. I think you can buy the same type of cloak in a market, just that it lacks the emblem. But that's good too. Oh, Little Phoenix prefers clothes that can reflect a valiant and formidable appearance. Even the clothes she's wearing right now are, a bit like the set of battle clothes that you used to use. This is purely due to your influence, right? Probably. Yin Nuashing could not help but mutter. It's not a good habit to copy me. Copy me? You've made her pick up the Nethervoid sword. It's normal for her to copy your style. Well, that's true. What about Ning Fei and the rest? Ning Fei and Halcyon are on Lu Yan's ship. They seem to be receiving more information. They want to know more about this world. By the way, because of this matter, we've been invited to the Great Temple. They'll probably go to the Great Temple later. By the way, I've already been there. Hui was a little surprised. It had only been a while since the blue sky and white clouds in the afternoon until dusk covered the sky. How could so many things have happened in the time it took him to check things out in the Chaos Wasteland? What's in the Great Temple? There's various detailed information, but Yin Nuashing's face twitched, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But it's nothing special. There are 3 ways to convert mana crystals into cleansing stones. The cleansing stone for civilian use, the cleansing stone for combat, and the cleansing stone for the Light Chaser Tower. There are more branches below that, but I won't go into detail since it's not worth noting. There's also the specific manufacturing method of the Light Chaser and the Light Chaser Tower. Since we helped to end the battle at Abyss Moon City, I've gotten a feel for the specific manufacturing method of those 2 things. It's just that, well, it's probably useless. The most valuable information in the Great Temple are those 3. Although I've read through the rest, I've ignored them because there's nothing to pay attention to. It's certainly more comprehensive and detailed than the information in the Thousand Books Tower, but it's useless since it still records matters of the 3 major regions. It feels like the Great Temple is something like a military restricted zone. A cleansing stone, a light chaser, and a light chaser tower. Those 3 things are used to deal with the most dangerous things in this world. If you do it, you should be able to modify the light chaser tower. I'll just throw a level 2 energy tower up there. Unless it's attacked by a group of mid-tier primeval incipient great demons for 100 years, they won't be able to break through its defenses. That's true. But you did remind me. Yin Nuashing let out a long breath and shook her wrist. If we can't deal with this world in the end, we'll just throw them a bunch of energy towers. There's no need to pointlessly consume the power of order. And it's not a bad thing if the energy towers we leave behind can be used as a seed. Hui nodded. He had no objection to that since he had thought so from the start. It would be good if they could deal with it in passing, but if they couldn't, it would depend on time. They also had matters to attend to in the Void frontline, and couldn't spend too much time here. I keep having the feeling that we have completely forgotten about the 3 families in the primeval realm. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at him. We can't forget. It's just a lower priority. This matter can be dealt with once we get out. As for the internal matters now, how good do you think their situation can be when the chaos demonic wilderness covers an unknown area? That's why you shouldn't sentence them to death without permission. No matter what, they are still peak origins experts with some strength in the Order Void. Many of them will definitely survive. I didn't say they were dead. I just designated a small number of them. Yin Nuashing shrugged. This matter is still a low priority. Let's talk about it when we meet them. He yawned, just as he stood up and looked at Lu Yan's ship and wanted to talk about the former shadow. A figure with cold air and snowflakes suddenly landed in front of him. He and Hui were stunned and held back their yawns. Just as he thought that Shuang had encountered something urgent and looked away, she suddenly rushed over and hugged him. Before he could react, she carried him and rushed to the north of the city. Little star, come over too. It's good to be without your shortcomings. Hui watched Feng being carried by Shuang and rushed to the north of the city. He laughed dryly. It's not easy for Feng either. He is tormented by his own girl every day. He was about to go to Lu Yan's ship to see Ning Fei and the others when the cold figure returned with Feng. She landed on the city wall and tilted her head to look at him. Lord Hui, you're not coming? Hui looked at Maple, who was already drowning in the ample amount of gentleness and couldn't move. He laughed dryly and waved his hand vigorously. I'll forget it. Forget it. I won't be your third wheel. If you see anything delicious, just pack 2 portions for me. Oh, don't worry if you don't know what to buy. Feng knows. Just get something. Shuang Shuang nodded and hugged little Star tightly, as if she was hugging a rag doll. She turned into a stream of cold air and rushed towards the north of the city. Hui was sweating profusely. If Maple had a married life, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to get out of bed. How could a berserker, the most violent warrior in the Order Void, become so weak in the face of this? He judged for 2 minutes and felt that this was caused by Feng's lack of personality. He couldn't judge matters of the heart at all. If he forced himself to judge, his brain would probably stop working. Sigh. Hui shook his head and sighed with his hands behind his back. Feng, the little star who can't escape from the clutches of the devil. Sooner or later, you'll be plucked from the starry sky. Sigh, what's sooner or later? I think you've already been plucked from the starry sky. Hui turned around twice on the spot and walked towards the boat with his hands behind his head. I'd better encourage these girls to push him down one day, although I don't know if it will cause Feng to overreact. Well, it's quite interesting. Speaking of which, the silly smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and he stopped in his tracks. He looked up at the starry sky and let out a long sigh. It's been a long time, and I haven't found her yet. It's a circle with a long history. In the end, nothing has ended. In the end, it seems that nothing has started. Time. I'll ask Feng to help me find some other day. He's the best at finding things if time permits. The Great Shrine was located in every big and small city in this nameless world. Just as he understood from Feng, this was an important building similar to a military zone. It was responsible for the processing of magic crystals and was responsible for the defense of every city. Of course, it didn't refer to the trivial matters of daily life. There were other people and other buildings in charge. The things that the Great Shrine was in charge of were related to the chaos magic wilderness and the demonized life. The two things that it was responsible for were also the same. In such an important place, the intelligence and news in charge of it were naturally quite comprehensive. It was also because it was too comprehensive that when he found nothing new after searching around, Feng was immediately depressed. This meant that no matter how he searched, he wouldn't get any new information. He might have to wander around blindly for the rest of the journey. Well, from Feng's understanding, this was the case. However, when they talked with Lu Yin before, they mentioned some places. To put it simply, they were relics. They were relics left behind after the destruction of the previous generation. Moreover, they were not in the chaos magic wilderness, although they didn't know if they could find anything in those places or if they could see the shadow of the past. Anyway, they didn't have any clues now. They had to find a vague target to wander around blindly. Since Feng could see the shadow of the past, then they should go to some of the remains left behind by the previous generation to see if they could find something more special. Speaking of which, why did the shadow of the past appear on the ship yesterday? Could it be that there were relics nearby? No, it shouldn't be. He had looked around the area within a radius of 100 million miles, or even hundreds of light years. There were cities of all sizes, but there wasn't even a single brick of those dilapidated relics. So, it might have slipped over from somewhere else, or something. He also went to the Great Shrine. Well, there was nothing much to say about the internal structure. It was just a spacious space, and, of course, there was no worship of any god. After all, there was no religion in this world. After all, it was the 8 Elements realm. If it was the lower elements realm, there would probably be a huge statue more than 1,000 feet tall for everyone to worship. After the tour, the short trip to Abyss Moon City was over. In the past 2 days, the 3 of them had been running around to understand more hidden things in this world. As for Maple, he had been tormented by his girls for the past 2 days. When they passed by 2 minutes ago and saw him, he had already become her. And that silver-white dress fluttered in the wind. That beautiful hair ornament, that head ornament, that makeup, those earrings, and that eyeshadow were so devastatingly beautiful that they couldn't help but feel pity for him. If those gorgeous eyes could have some highlights, it would be even more vivid. That scene really made the 3 of them tremble. Who knew what had happened in the short 2 days that they hadn't seen him? Mr. Fang's eyes have already died. Ge Zhoming couldn't help but shudder. He looked at Feng, Fairy Feng, who was being carried away and couldn't help but mutter. Girls are really scary, really. To be able to force the most irritable Order warrior of the Order Void into such a state, the more beautiful the girl is, the more dangerous it is. This group of girls with top combat power in the Void is even more dangerous. Ning Fei endured the stomachache and trembling liver and couldn't help but ask, "Is Mr. Feng okay?" Hui sighed faintly, patted his shoulder and sighed, "It's okay." Feng hasn't started to let go of himself yet, which proves that his ability to resist pressure is still in effect. And have you forgotten that there are still a few who haven't followed out from the Void frontline? So, Feng's ability to resist pressure should be higher than we thought. Thinking of this, Ge Zhongming and Hui had goosebumps. They couldn't help but put their palms together. I hope he's okay. The chaos demonic wilderness should really be fine. Even if the land had not been purified, there would not be any trouble for the time being. It was very peaceful at the moment. The energy reaction was at a very low level. Only the free part of the negative energy was left floating in the wilderness. The newly born demonized creatures were quite low level and would not come close to Abyss Moon City. It should really be quiet for a long time. The next thing was to go to the center of these three areas. What didn't he say before? Then he said it now. The 17-year war of Abyss Moon City was also an abnormal event in the past. Let's not talk about the previous generation for the time being. Just talk about this generation. It's not like the battle to destroy Abyss Moon City at all costs has never happened before. There have even been larger-scale battles, but it has never lasted so long. It's as if they are determined to flatten this place. Liu Yin sighed and adjusted the hat on his head. Now that the war has stopped, I also need to go to the main hall of the Great Shrine to report the situation. Maybe the same thing has happened in other places. If that's the case, the entire region may have to enter an emergency state of defense. Hui and the other two were stupefied. This was indeed a place where information was transmitted by shouting. To report, they had to travel thousands of miles to the main hall in the center of the region. The ruins mentioned earlier were also in the north of these three large areas. It was on the way to the capital of God in the center. They also planned to go there on the way. They had already agreed with Liu Yin in advance that they would take a ride on the ship. He welcomed them with great enthusiasm, as if he had long planned to take them on the ship. Anyway, today was the day to set off. The journey is long, and it will take some time to go back and forth. Although going inside is to avoid the safe area of the Chaos Devil Wilderness, necessary precautions are also needed. Demonized creatures are not simple existences that will be bound in the Chaos Devil Wilderness. There will also be large demonized creatures wandering inside, although they are not common. Liu Yin pointed at the barrier of the ship and said to Hui and the others. Speaking of wandering, Hui raised his hand and gestured to the sky. We saw a demonized creature the size of a small city flying in the sky before. That was not within the range of the Chaos Devil Wilderness. Liu Yin's expression suddenly changed. He looked at him seriously and said in a hurried tone, "Where did you see it? Did anything happen when you saw it? Were there any unusual movements or anomalies? For example, the movements of other demonized creatures?" I saw it in Rock City on the side of the Chaos Devil Wilderness." Hui saw his serious look as if he had heard something terrible. He also thought about it seriously for a while and tried his best to tell the details. That's about it. For the time being, it was just wandering aimlessly. That is still a safe situation. Liu Yin heaved a sigh of relief after hearing that. Seeing Hui and the others' puzzled expressions, he explained, "That's a kind of great demon. You should know that they are a kind of half-energy, half-material life form. They can change into any form, whether it's a great demon in the form of a human or a beast. When they grow up, they will eventually become what you see, like fortresses and fortresses floating in the sky. Their original form is still a kind of life form, a living fortress. Just like the name fortress, when a great demon in the form of a fortress enters an attack state, it will stretch its body and release all the demonic life forms hidden in its body. If it's just an ordinary wandering state, it won't have any effect. However, since there's a great demon in the form of a fortress wandering around Rock City, let them be a little more vigilant. Liu Yin waved his hand and glanced at a great temple warrior standing next to him. The latter immediately bowed and jumped off the ship. This is basically a nest. I didn't expect it to be such a dangerous thing. If I had known, I would have told the people in Rock City before I left. Gu Zhoming sighed softly. A great demon in the form of a fortress will not appear unless it is a real battle that could destroy a city. It is normal that you have not seen it before. Moreover, a great demon in the form of a fortress moves very slowly. It is not too late to inform them now. Liu Yin smiled and looked up at the sky. He said to Liu Xiaoqiu beside him, "Xiaoqiu, go and inform everyone to get ready to leave. It is getting late. Where are your companions?" This was said to Hui and the others. He still remembered that there was a large group of girls, but he did not see them for the past 3 days. He did not know where they went. They probably wandered around the city too much. But don't worry, they are very punctual. They will probably come before we leave. Oh, they have arrived. As soon as Huey's voice fell, everyone heard the sound of footsteps landing on the boat. When they turned their heads to look, they were all stunned. 6, 7 beautiful girls gathered together. It was really a beautiful scene. Their eyes were almost filled with sparkling light. It was just that the girl walking in the middle had lifeless eyes. She looked like she was about to die. Hui hurriedly went up and helped Feng out. He pressed on his shoulder and shook him. "Hey, Feng, are you still alive? Wake up." "Yes, I am listening," Feng replied in a daze. Hui was stunned. "What do you mean you're listening? We are about to leave. Don't be in a daze. Hurry and wake up." "Yes, I am listening. What else?" Feng's voice sounded again. Although there was an additional sentence, it still sounded dry and dazed. "Feng, you are awake." "No, what is wrong with you? Are you sleepwalking?" "Oh, this thing is not bad." "Okay, this is also not bad." "Yes, they're all very beautiful." Everyone, it was over. This guy's brain was damaged. He did not answer the question from the beginning. It sounded like he was just giving perfunctory answers. We looked at CU and the others with a horrified expression. What did you guys do to him? He was beaten up by the chaotic conceptual body and the heavenly origin god, but he did not collapse like this. Oh, and? Everyone, no, we are not talking to you right now. All right, with just a few short sentences, she already knew what he had experienced in the past 3 days. We did not know whether to laugh or cry. You guys are too cruel. The girls turned their heads away with red faces. Siyu could not help but stick out her tongue. Seeing Little Star's confused appearance, she was a little embarrassed. I think we went a little overboard. How was this going overboard? This is a situation where one's rationality has fallen to the extreme and is suffering irreparable damage. Hui Chi sunk into his dantian and took a deep breath. He raised his voice and roared into Feng's ears. Feng. Yes, you are so King noisy. Following this roar, Yin Nuoxing's eyes suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. Then, he cursed and roared at the same time. He subconsciously waved his hand to the right. Hui was prepared to be beaten up, but he saw the sandbag-sized fist hovering in front of him at the last moment. The wind from the sonic boom blew his hair askew, and he couldn't help but sweat a drop. He tilted his head and saw Feng shaking his head in a daze. It's dawn. Everyone, it has been more than 10 hours since dawn. You should come back to your senses. Hui pressed down on his shoulder with a heavy heart. What kind of tragic things have you experienced? Yin Nuoxing lowered his head for a long time and took a deep breath. Then he looked up and gritted his teeth as he looked at the girls who were covering their mouths and laughing. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. For example, being forced to wear female clothes. For example, being deliberately placed on the street. For example, being hit on by more than 10,000 people and not differentiated by gender. Hui, you don't have to say anymore. I understand. After hearing this, he knew that it was a series of things. None of the girls who were laughing nonstop were innocent. He sighed for a while and patted Feng's shoulder. He sighed and said, "Go and rest for a while. Change your clothes or something. Look at your clothes now. We're in a bigger place. If you don't want to be hit on all the way, I suggest you change your clothes first. Cough, cough. There are rooms inside. Yes. Lu Yin pointed at the turret-like building. Yin Nuoshing sighed and nodded at him. Then, he floated toward the turret. His steps were light and his mind was unstable. He looked very pitiful. After floating for a few steps, he seemed to have sensed something and suddenly turned back. The group of girls who were following him sneakily, quickly turned their heads and stopped in their tracks. Everyone was trying their best to hold back their laughter until their faces were distorted. Don't come over. Yin Nuoshing took a deep breath and he shouted loudly. She quickly rushed toward the turret. Her back view looked very tragic, as if she was going to blow up a fortress alone. Then, in the next second, the girls also rushed over, leaving Sui Qing and Xiao Shi to watch quietly. They waved their hands and watched the group of people disappear into the door. After being watched by everyone for a while, Xiao Shi obediently raised his hand. I didn't participate this time. Everyone, did he mean that he had a part in the previous incident? Sad, sad, sad. Phone. Hui shook his head and sighed. Lu Yan's expression was strange. Actually, I don't understand that. Is your partner male or female? Male, 100% male, Hui and Ning Fei said in unison. Although his gender is female, his actual body is male. It's precisely because that guy is not what he looks like that he often causes trouble. This is a way for them to interact with each other and improve their relationship. It's very normal. At this time, all you need to do is to laugh. Don't worry about them. They'll return to normal after they're done messing around. Lu Yin nodded in a daze. After thinking for 2 seconds, he decided not to delve into this matter. He waved his hand and ordered the ship to leave the tower and head toward the distant north at full speed. Chapter 1977. This was a world of flat land, not a ball or any other strange shape. This meant that as long as one had good eyesight and the sky was clear, one could see the end of the world from one end to the other if one stood at a high enough altitude. They had seen a few similar worlds before. Their realm of the gods was in the same situation. It was a floating island, just a little bigger. However, the heavenly gods of origin, who had certain sentiments, had put layers of barriers on the realm of the gods, forcibly distorting the internal space into a spherical shape. Standing in it, one could experience the perspective of standing on a planet overlooking an arc. But that was only the visual effect, and there was no way to go from the extreme left to the extreme right. This kind of world was man-made, unless it was under very special circumstances. Its sky and ground were different from ordinary stars. The celestial realm was a floating island, and the bottom of it was a bloated, inverted pyramid. If one were to dig all the way down from the edge of the 4 primal regions, one would be able to dig through it. However, one would not be able to touch the space at the bottom of the celestial realm. There is no need to be nervous when one dug through the celestial realm, because everyone knew in the reasons mentioned earlier. When one dug through the celestial realm, the gravity would be reversed, and one would not fall into the starry sky. Although he was not sure if the heavenly gods of origin did it for fun, nor did he know why he dug through the realm of the gods back then. Ahem, that was not the main point of the topic. What he wanted to say was that he had just glanced at the land and sky, and the latter was nothing special. It was just an atmosphere that was bound by rules, and was not an atmosphere because it was just a layer of barrier that stood very, very, very high up in the sky. It reflected everything that should exist in the sky, including the stars that would be captured by the sky. As for the land, the situation in the depths of the land was similar to a 1,000-layer cake, with layers upon layers and layers upon layers, with inexplicable things that could not be sensed in detail, separating the land from each other. He did not know what it was, but it probably had something to do with the structure of this world. Deep underground? Yin Nuoshing, who had just changed her clothes, heard Huey's question as soon as she walked out. Her slightly dispirited expression immediately switched to a serious one. Her eyes flickered as she extended her senses and quickly touched the ground. Then, she spread her hands and said, I don't know. That thing is tightly covered. It doesn't even let us see it. It's like a thick curtain. Cover? Curtain? Hui was stunned. He didn't feel this strange feeling just now. What do you mean? When the senses of the soul pass through each curtain, the detection of the bottom will weaken a little. If you don't pay too much attention, you won't notice the weakening of this part. I passed through dozens of curtains in one breath, so I immediately sensed that something was wrong with my senses. Yin Nuashing crossed her arms, frowned slightly, and muttered, "Well, the weakening of the senses is like, let me put it simply, when you stand on the ground, your eyes are farsighted. After drilling dozens of layers underground, you become deeply myopic. Without glasses, you can't see anything beyond 2 meters. Other than mosaics, you can only see things that are unknown." Something like that. Hui sighed and pinched his chin. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand vigorously. Forget it, forget it. I won't look at it anymore. Let the secret buried in the earth be buried forever. I feel like something is going to happen if I keep digging. Back in the Cloud Continent, we dug out something terrible. Oh, damn it. That damn thing was there in the first place. Something will happen even if you don't dig it out. Yin Nuashing smacked her lips and waved her hands. But I don't intend to delve into it. It seems to have nothing to do with our purpose of coming here. It's someone else's world, right? Let's leave some mystery for them to explore on their own. It's meaningless to dig out everything. Hui frowned when he saw Maple's slightly flickering eyes. What about the truth? At present, I still don't have a good feeling about this place under the ground. I don't want to go in for the time being. Hui grinned and turned his head to look at the west of the earth. As he said just now, he could see very far away without any obstruction. The path from Abyss Moon City to the capital of God in the center was far away from the Chaos Demon Wilderness in the west, but if he really wanted to see it, he could still see that place. He could vaguely see many demonized creatures wandering inside, and some particularly large demons flashing by. Looking at the unexplored map for a while, he asked Maple, "Why do you think the map of the Chaos Demon Wilderness is in an unexplored state? With the power we saw in Abyss Moon City, it shouldn't be difficult to explore the wilderness, right?" Regarding this question, Yin Nuashing turned her head to look at Lu Xiaoqiu without thinking. Is there anyone in this world exploring the Chaos Demon Wilderness now? Lu Xiaoqiu, who was left here to accompany her father, was startled when she heard this. She turned her head and saw the group looking at her curiously. She thought seriously and shook her head. As far as I know, no. As I said a few days ago, going deep into the Chaos Demon Wilderness, the degree of violence of the demonized creatures will be raised by several levels. Great demons will become visible everywhere, and it's extremely dangerous. If you want to explore the Chaos Demon Wilderness, you have to fight your way in. It's impossible to explore in a completely unstable and never-ending situation. You can't even draw a map. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many unexplored areas. Fight your way in and out, and experience the feeling of being besieged from all sides. Yin Nuashing said softly. That's it. That's why no one would explore the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Moreover, no matter how much you explore, it's just to figure out the territory of the demonized creatures. This kind of information is useless. It's better to understand the situation in the corresponding area near your own city gate. That way, the danger will be greatly reduced, and you could be the first to notice when there's movement in the Chaos Demon Wilderness. The gray-haired girl sighed. The smile that had been hanging on her face had completely disappeared. Her hands were gently twisted together. But in this way, we will no longer have a way to know if there are still human compatriots on the other side of the Chaos Demon Wilderness. Are there people trapped in prison, praying, waiting for someone to pull them out and give them a helping hand? If we find them, we may be able to save many people. Even if there is no such a critical situation, it is also an excellent thing to see more of our compatriots living in other parts of the world and living a peaceful day against the demonized creatures. It's as if to prove that I'm not alone. She let out a long sigh of relief and turned her head to look at the Chaos Demon Wilderness in the distance. The extremely fast speed of the airship did not affect their serious gaze. The chaos demon wilderness is just as sea. There will be undercurrents, surging, and changes. What really separates the world may not be this chaotic sea, but all of us who choose to shrink our hands and not stretch out. However, this may be my own whimsical imagination. Others may have other considerations or experiences. After all, we don't know what the situation is in the depths of the chaos demon wilderness. If we rashly go in, there may be unexpected dangers. Lu Xiaoqiu suddenly froze. She stuck out her tongue and turned to them with an apologetic expression. Sorry, forget what I said just now. I said something unnecessary. Yin Nuoxing and the others looked at each other and shrugged. There were such people in every world. Based on the situation of this world itself, they might be anomalies. But as said before, they were outsiders, and they were anomalies themselves. Therefore, they could more accurately discover the situation of this world. In their opinion, there was nothing wrong with this idea. They could even laugh and say pioneers. If the conditions allowed, they could bring about earth-shaking changes to the entire world. They were such people. Well, it was usually quite difficult. After all, the pioneers in their definition would be buried in the ground and roasted like sweet potatoes or skewered and roasted. It wasn't a good job at all. Mei Mao flashed for a while and suddenly said, "What is the sea?" Yin Nuoxing and the rest were stunned. For a moment, they thought that the girl had fainted from sitting on the boat. But after thinking carefully, they suddenly realized that there was no sea in the three major regions. Oh, I didn't tell you. Lu Xiaoqiu knocked on her own head and laughed embarrassedly. It's a land covered by endless water. It's like a clear sapphire. Even if all the rivers and lakes in the three regions were gathered together, they wouldn't be able to compare to it. It's also the end of countless rivers. They will eventually gather together and become one. I've only heard of this thing, but I haven't seen it with my own eyes. So the impression it gives me is that it's a huge lake filled with water. Also, I've heard that the airships we use now are actually tools to ride the wind and break the waves on the sea a long time ago. I like to see what the so-called sea looks like. Yin Nuoxing and the rest looked at each other and talked through their souls. It seemed that there was a place in this world that used the entire region as an ocean, just like the East Sea in the realm of the gods. If we go along the river, we may be able to find it. But we have already crossed to another place. We may have to cross the Chaos Demon Wilderness. It took a full day to go from Abyss Moon City to the capital of gods. It corresponded to 1 day in this world, which was 56 hours in the Yuan realm. Yes, 56 hours in a day. This was the longest day they had seen in so many worlds. But considering the unusual situation of this world, it was not incomprehensible. A land with a length measured in billions or even trillions of light years. Who knew how many stars were hanging in the sky to meet the light requirements of this world at the same time? Oh, I forgot that this was a special world. There was no real sun, moon, or stars. The sun hanging in the sky was just a decoration. The light and the change of day and night were probably controlled by the barrier in the sky. There were probably not many people in this world who really cared about this. 56 hours was a short period of time. The journey was peaceful. Other than seeing Maple being tormented by the girls, nothing else happened. There were outsiders here, so they didn't cause too much trouble. However, when they saw Maple's slightly aggrieved and helpless expression, no, that guy's expression was too pitiful and funny at the same time. After being a clothes hanger for the girls more than a dozen times, Maple finally found an excuse to escape. At this time, the people around him who were unfamiliar with him were already numb. When they saw Maple, a big man dressed in female clothes, being pushed in and out of the ship, their worldview had already collapsed repeatedly. At this time, they were like stone pillars standing on the side of the ship without any movement. I didn't expect them to buy so many clothes. Yin Nuoxing looked depressed and still depressed. She leaned on the side of the ship with a worried face. I feel like there's nothing left to be said. Hui patted her on the shoulder and said earnestly, "There are only 0 and countless times of wearing women's clothes. Just accept it. This will probably happen more often in the future. Yin Nuashing turned her head and glared at him fiercely, but Hui was not afraid of her gaze at all. Besides, you are now dressed like a 16-year-old girl wearing the most solemn and grand dress for her wedding. Your clothes are also annoying. Although I have seen it for 5 eras, I still feel like you will be escorted into the temple in the next second. There are musicians standing on both sides of the road, and there are a large row of tables and chairs inside. There are not enough people to sit. Stop talking. Yin Nuashing gritted her teeth and blushed. If you really can't stand it, why don't you just tell them? Yin Nuashing was silent for a while. She turned her head helplessly. Seeing them so happy, I can't open my mouth. Look, isn't this the result of your interaction and cooperation? Then why are you still burying? Oh, it's not that you are complaining. You're just too depressed, right? Maple glanced at him and mumbled with his head lowered. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You just spoil them and indulge them. You can't open your mouth. Yin Nuashing shrunk her neck until it was almost invisible. She quickly found another topic. What about the former shadow? How would I know? We can't see it. We glanced at her speechlessly and shrugged. When I was still in Abyss Moon City, I looked around and didn't find anything that could be called a relic. So I was wondering if the Lord of Shadow you saw that day floated over from somewhere else. Floated? Yin Nuashing was startled for a moment. I don't know. I didn't think about this problem. I thought it was a regular on this ship, but I just walked around and didn't see it. If it floated over, it might have gone back by now. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye. When night came, as there was nothing much to do, everyone chose to rest. Although it was the same whether they slept or not, it was just a way to pass the time. The others went to rest. They planned to stand on the deck and enjoy the abnormal wind, then look at the desolate, dark, and blurry night scenery. However, if they didn't look carefully, they could only see a bunch of messy lines. After looking around, they realized that the fake starry sky in the sky looked better. At least the effect was realistic and beautiful enough. Just as he was about to find a random topic to chat with Feng until dawn, Yu and Shuang came to catch them. When he saw Feng being dragged in by the two of them, he knew that he would not be able to be kind tonight. Well, he couldn't care less about this anyway. Now that he was the only one left on the deck, he suddenly felt bored. Nearly 20 hours of the night slowly passed. The next morning, when Maple walked out of the room and walked to Hui sat up and looked at him. He was slightly stunned. You look good. Did you get some rest last night? Yes. Maple nodded. Yes. I cannot sleep. I can't sleep and let my thoughts run wild. I have already made plans to sleep physically if I can't sleep. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and said this in an unknown state of mind. He sighed softly, although I'm already used to it, but, being hugged by someone as a pillow is indeed a very strange experience. Speaking of which, when I laid down yesterday, I was lying straight down. Why did I feel like I was being pulled from 4 directions after waking up? Hui, it's been hard on you. After half an hour, everyone woke up with the morning sun. The group of girls in Feng's house also tidied up and went out in a line. They then dragged someone who was still yawning back to the room. He took a few glances and noticed that when Feng came out, he was a little disheveled and a little embarrassed. He probably ran for his life after waking up in the morning and did not tidy himself up. Now, he was being dragged back to the room to tidy himself up. He thought for a long time and finally figured out Feng's position in their hearts at the moment. He was an oversized puppet, and a puppet that was not very flexible. He needed people to take care of him from top to bottom. The only good thing was that he did not need to be moved around and could walk on his own. Lin Sanjiu felt that Maple's identity had become much more subtle after he came here. Perhaps it was because the environment was slightly more peaceful that he had relaxed. When the front line of the void was tense, Lin Sanjiu could not see Maple being tormented here and there. We're almost at the capital of God. When Feng and the others came out again, the gray-haired girl suddenly said softly, "In 2 minutes, we will be back to normal flying speed. Only from the sky can we see the full view of the capital of God. For you guys who are here for the first time, the scenery of the capital of God is not to be missed." See, you hurriedly said, "the capital of God," is one of the big cities in the big land, the big region, and so on. Yes, even in this category, the capital of God is second to none. Lu Xiaoqiu smiled and nodded. She saw that the space was gradually recovering from its elongated and blurry state. Lu Xiaoqiu looked at the bow of the ship and said, "We are here." They stopped using some method to adjust the space to increase their speed, and the space returned to normal in an instant. In the sky around them, they could see that some of the airships suddenly appeared at a similar distance away and then continued to move forward at a moderate speed. They also turned off the ship's energy barrier along the way. Now that they were in the vicinity of the capital of God, there was no need to use a single energy barrier. What appeared in front of them was a huge circular city, 1 or 2 times larger than the big cities in the realm of the gods. The overall structure, well, let's just ignore it. Every city was about the same. If there were differences, for example, there were towers used to dock airships in the 4 directions. The scale of this city was much larger than that of Abyss Moon City and Boulder City. The 100,000 feet tall towers were divided into a dozen floors on the left and right, and the platforms that spread out horizontally were like docks. The towers of the latter 2 cities were either on the east or the west. The capital of God had 4 towers and thousands of docked airships, and it felt a little like a port city. However, the docks could only dock passenger ships up to 2,000 feet long. Those larger ships used for battle would not be able to dock here. No wonder they changed ships when they went out, and did not take the flashy and huge one. At the center of the capital of God was a mountain that was hundreds of feet tall. The lightning-chasing tower was built on top of this mountain. Its appearance was different from the pillar towers in Abyss Moon City and Rock City. It looked larger and more intricate, with many complicated structures pieced together to form a pattern that was hard to recall at the moment. There were a total of 3 purifying magic stones that were used as the core of the tower. There were also a total of 7 rings arranged in a huge barrier around the lightning-chasing tower. Its defense was so strong that even the demonized creatures would have a hard time fighting against it. Siyu pulled Little Star's hand and asked, "Why does this tower look like a coral?" Well, the tower looked like a tree branch. Well, it did look like a coral in comparison. This Light Chaser Tower is a model left behind from the past. Like Abyss Moon City, the Light Chaser Towers are all new. The gray-haired girl explained softly to them. It is a living ruin, and it is a creation that cannot be replicated with the current technology. Is it left behind by the previous generation? Yin Nuashing asked. Perhaps it is from the previous generation. The gray-haired girl shook her head. According to the records that my father told me, the destruction of the previous generation was caused by the demonized beings expending all their energy and finally flattening the capital of God. However, they could not destroy this Light Chaser Tower, which is why I think it must have come from a long time ago. Yin Nuashing and the others turned their eyes to Young Hour, who looked at the Light Chaser Tower for a while. That is a barrier used to defend against high-level primeval. Even its structure does not lose out to that barrier, which means that the demonized beings in this world have not reached the peak of mid-level primeval. The barrier of the Light Chaser Tower was broken by the consumption of energy, which is the flaw of the creation itself. It lacks an energy core that can be used for a long time, so it can only be supported by replacing the purifying magic stones. However, the collection of magic stones is not easy, and it is usually difficult to collect large pieces of magic stones in a great battle. After all, everyone is using all their strength. Usually, if we can destroy the demonized beings themselves, we can easily destroy the magic stones they contain. Hui shrugged. The idea of replenishing while fighting will become a fantasy, especially when the number of demonized life forms has reached an uncountable level. I thought it would be a contest of endurance in the end, and see who would break their limbs first and give up struggling. Siyu said through the soul transmission. Everyone, why was this competition of endurance? Why did it make them think of the void frontline? The endless battles, there seemed to be just like a competition of endurance in the battle between order and chaos. Endurance is just one part of it. Young Hour said seriously. That's right. After all, the time needed to fight was measured in epochs. How could one fight without some stamina? Moreover, stamina and perseverance alone were not enough. One also needed the corresponding combat power. Just mentioning that gave one a headache. One could see that everyone's spirits were instantly dampened by half. At this moment, a few more words would drag them back to the situation at the Void front lines. It's a sea of people. My head is starting to hurt. Yin Nuashing took advantage of the time when the ship was anchored to look out. With just one glance, his head was wide open. Just the port of the tower was packed with people. Even if he looked down at the city from his place, he could still see densely packed little ants scurrying around inside. The clamor twisted into a sound wave that rushed up from below, causing his head to buzz. As expected of the capital of God, it's so prosperous. Huey's face twitched. But it's too noisy. I can't stand it. I'm used to enjoying the noise in the Void and the Void front lines. It's a different feeling to return to a place with people and listen to the noise. Ningfei also grinned and picked his ear. I can't stand it. Feng, are you okay? Hui saw Feng's face turn green and was about to vomit. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is it that bad? Actually, it's not bad, but it's a little hard to bear. My ears have been quiet for 5 epochs. You have to let me get used to it again. Even Xintian's sacred city isn't that bad. Yin Nuashing lowered his head and muttered. Hui smiled bitterly. You want to vomit before you even get off the ship. Wait a minute. Little star? Little star. Come quickly. I think I saw a fun place. Siyu suddenly became crazy. She stretched out her hand to grab Feng and rushed out. Hui saw Feng's green and white expression and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He added the next half of the sentence. Later when your girl grabs you, won't you spiral into the sky? What a pity, Feng. At this time, Lu Yin also walked out of the turret with his people. He looked at them and smiled. You don't have to worry about us. It's quite boring to report. It's rare to come to the capital of God. You can just walk around. That's true. Hui and the other two turned their heads and looked at the sea of people. Then, they thought of the observer's green face and shuddered. Forget it, forget it. Let's go and take a look. Just treat it as a visit to the great temple. Chapter 1978. The headquarters of the Great Temple was located at the foot of the mountain. However, it should be said that the size of the Great Temple was dozens of times larger than this small mountain. It was as if this mountain was the backyard of the Great Temple. The massive size of the Light Chaser Tower cast a shadow that covered half of the tens of thousands of feet tall Great Temple. This Great Temple, which was several times larger than the other Great Temples, also carried the characteristics of the Eight Elements realm very well. Other things aside, it had to be big enough. In order to accommodate this Great Temple, an area of thousands of miles was cleared. It was more than enough to throw 10,000 people on horseback or to sing and dance. There was no need to worry about disturbing the neighbors. The layout of the Great Temple was almost exactly the same as the other Great Temples, except for the obvious difference in size. Other than that, for example, there were more decorations. For example, there were more steeples that looked like bamboo shoots. It was almost like a bamboo forest. It was said that there was more than one main hall. The people talked about it and said that it was related to the big district and the dozens of cities. However, they didn't know how it was divided. Moreover, there were so many main halls. They guessed that there was a main hall above them. The Grand Chief Hall that you're thinking of does exist in the records, but it's gone now. It's not called that either. It has its own unique name, but all of this information has disappeared in the torrent of time and destruction. What's left are only fragments that mention to others that there's actually something above. Lu Yin led them to the interior of the Great Temple. As he walked, he said, as for the Great Temple, there is one in every region. It's not related to the dozens of cities. Also, although the capital of God is one of the dozens of cities, each region occupies one of them. The remaining numbers actually refer to the other cities. Our Abyss Moon City is actually one of them, but it's only ranked in the middle. The region we're in is the southernmost, which is the southern region. Most of the capital of God is located in the middle of the region. If there are differences, it may change according to the location of the Chaos Devil Wilderness. For example, the capital of God in the northern region is located next to the Chaos Devil Wilderness. It's guarding the front line. It's the result of the adjustments made by the ruler there. Before entering, Lu Yin looked up at the light-chasing tower that extended to the top of the sky. He pondered for a moment and sighed. A moment later, he led Hui and the rest, as well as Xiaoqiu, into the main hall of the great shrine. There were surprisingly many people coming and going here. Most of them were members of the Grand Temple wearing white hats and white robes. They came and went in a hurry. When the temple warriors passing by saw Lu Yin and the others, they would hurriedly bow and continue on their way. When they stepped in the main hall, Hui and the others were slightly startled. They simultaneously lowered their heads to look at the floor of the main hall. The smooth floor was made of purifying magic stones. They could faintly see that the interior seemed to be inlaid. No, it was carved with some complicated carvings, like scratches carved on glass. It extended from the entrance to the innermost part of the main hall and extended to the left and right long corridors. It seemed that the entire floor of the main hall was paved with purifying magic stones. The floor of the main hall is made of purifying magic stones for a special purpose. If you look carefully, you should be able to find a weak connection between the main hall and the light-chasing tower next to it. Lu Yin saw that they were curiously looking at the floor. He also turned his head to take a look. He saw that there was a faint white light at the place where Hui and the others were standing. The light spread a meter away along the complicated lines in the purifying magic stones. He could not help but sigh. What a pure power of consciousness and will. There are not many people who can cause such a reaction. The power of consciousness and will. Hui muttered in his mind. They did not often use this stuff. It could be said that they did not use it at all. They had long passed the time when they needed to use consciousness and will to stimulate all the power in their body. Although for the well-rounded celestial realm warriors, the power of consciousness and will did not fall behind for the time being. Even if they used it as a support, it would not be very effective. They did not expect that there would be there seemed to be a special use for it in this place. Is there something special about it? Ning Fei could not help but ask. There was only a very faint light under his and Halcyon's feet. It was not as big as the soles of their feet. Master Hui could make the light extend for more than a meter. As for Lu Yin and Lu Xiaoqiu, it was only about a foot away. It was obvious that there was some kind of classification. The power of consciousness and will does not involve a question of strength. It is a kind of pure, actually we can't say for sure. It is only mentioned in the remaining fragments of the records. Lu Yin muttered in a distressed voice. The degree of these two powers is also said to be pure and impure. So far from what we have discovered, it seems to be innate. That is the only thing we can say. After the consciousness and will mature, there will be no more changes. This is all based on experience. Although the people of the Great Shrine know more about this than others, they do not know where to start talking about it. As for a connection with the light-chasing tower, Lu Yin was about to continue when he sensed that the atmosphere in the main hall was not quite right. He could not help but turn his gaze and look at the people who were rushing in and out of the main hall. He could not help but frown. That's strange. I have never seen the main hall so busy in the past. Just as he was about to stop someone, a white-haired young man with anxiety written on the left side of his face and a hurried expression on the right side of his face hurried in front of them. Temple Master Lu, please come over here. After the young man finished speaking, he did not wait for them to respond and hurriedly ran toward the corridor on the right side of the hall. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. In any case, they first followed his footsteps. They thought that this white-haired young man would bring them to a meeting hall or a great hall where countless people would sit together and discuss something with a frown. But he didn't bring them there. Instead, he walked straight along a long corridor, passed through a bamboo spire, and came to the top floor of the main hall. Then he slowly stopped at a spot that looked like a garden, about 100 feet in radius. Hui and the others looked up. This was the top of the main hall of the main hall. There were only bamboo-like spires extending from below. They were dozens of meters higher than the garden platform and evenly spread all around as if clustered around the platform. Looking up at the sky, they could clearly see the lightning-chasing tower next to them. Its majestic size cast a shadow over the edge of the garden. Standing here and looking up, they felt that it would collapse with a bang. Here, they could vaguely see some transparent light passing through the sky. They had to look carefully to see that the light, which seemed to be cast by energy, was extending from the platform all the way to the lightning-chasing tower, entangling the latter. In the center of the garden platform was a torch-shaped tower of 1 meter in length and 10 feet in height. At the top of the tower was an irregular but barely diamond-shaped purifying stone of about 5 meters high. Sunlight fell on this almost transparent purifying stone of about 10 meters in height. The light refracted through the stone and fell into the pool below, forming a complex and mysterious pattern. Below was a pool of about 10 meters in radius. Only 4 narrow bridges suspended above the pool could lead to the torch tower. The entire pool was not filled with ordinary water. They looked carefully for a while and found that it was highly concentrated energy that had been condensed into liquid. If they jumped into the pool, they could see that the pattern formed by the purple light seemed to be a 3-dimensional pattern. I just don't understand what it means. Hui said in the soul message. Ning Fei and the other 2 nodded vigorously. In short, they had to engrave all these strange patterns in the garden-like platform first. Whether they would be useful or not would be decided later. The white-haired youth waited for a while before leading them onto the narrow bridge and to the side of the torch tower. Then he turned to salute Lu Yin and nodded. Master Lu, please take a look. The group of 5 rushed forward and spread out, looking around the torch tower. Lu Yin and Lu Xiaoqiu frowned at once. We noticed their serious expressions and thought for a while. Then he also observed carefully. The energy light that they saw in the air just now extended from the purifying stone at the top of the torch tower. After careful observation, they found that there was a thin layer of pure energy and white light flowing on the purifying stone. The energy came from the pure energy of this pool, but that layer of white light, well, it felt a bit like the spreading white light they saw when they walked on the floor of the main hall. The white light would move with their footsteps. Is that so? Even the main hall is in such a situation. Lu Yin suddenly sighed heavily and turned to look at the white-haired youth. This is why the main hall is so busy. When did it start? 2 years ago. The white-haired youth said solemnly. As early as 2 years ago, the purifying light had already shown signs of dimming. At that time, the main hall had already summoned all the temple masters in this area to discuss it. However, Abyss Moon City had been in battle, so we didn't know about this until now. He was a little confused when he saw their solemn expressions. He waited for them to stop talking before interrupting. Can you tell me what's going on? Lu Yin turned to look at them and pointed at the crystal from the corner of his eye. He whispered, that's why the barrier of the light-chasing tower can expel the demonized life. Its light was still exuberant many years ago and could cover this pool. However, after countless years, it has dimmed to the point that it can only barely adhere to the surface. Therefore, the expulsion effect of the barrier of the light-chasing tower has weakened a lot. Hui and the others looked at the large, purifying stone and couldn't help but say, I think I can blow this layer of light away with one breath. If the expulsion effect weakens, it means, well, the demonized life will continue to approach the city. Ning Fei pinched his chin and said softly. Then he suddenly raised his head. Could it be that when they get close to a certain extent, they will attack the city? Lu Yin responded in a dull voice. The white-haired youth said, not only that, we suspect that the 17 years of battle in Abyss Moon City is also because of this. Could it be that under normal circumstances, if the expulsion force of the barrier is strong enough, it won't take so long? He scratched his head in confusion. Exactly. The white-haired youth nodded and turned to look at the purifying stone on the torch tower. This expulsion effect is to achieve the effect of keeping the demonized life away by weakening and suppressing the demonized energy. If the demonized life is in a place where the concentration of demonized energy is too low, its activity will be slow and sluggish. On the contrary, it will become violent, just like the scene in the depths of the Chaos Demon Wilderness. After explaining everything in one sentence, we said, that is to say, if the expulsion, weakening, and suppression effect is normal, the demonized life will be further away from the barrier. Although they will still charge at the city because the demonized energy is too dense when they accumulate to a certain level. But after the battle, if the number of demonized life is reduced in time and the concentration of demonized energy is reduced, the demonized life will leave on its own. As he spoke, he was startled. Wait a minute. If that's the case, when the demonized life forms have accumulated to a certain extent, if the banishing effect is weakened to the point where the demonized life forms will launch an attack, then that's right. Abysmal Moon City was attacked under such circumstances. Lu Yin sighed. Originally, the defenses of each city have their own threshold for the accumulation of demonized life. When the threshold is about to be reached, they have to go outside the barrier regularly to clean up the demonized life. Because the concentration of demonized energy at that time is not enough to make the demonized life become violent, it is still considered safe. It doesn't take too much effort to clean it up to a safe level. However, when it is close to the threshold, if the expulsion effect of the barrier decreases on its own, then like a flood, Huey's face trembled a few times. Lu Yin turned to look at the white-haired youth. Could it be that such incidents have begun to appear in many places? That's true, but that's not the reason why everyone is worried. The main reason is, the white-haired young man was silent for a while. Then he looked to the north. After a long silence, he frowned and said in a low voice, the capital of God in the central region has fallen into the enemy's hands 20 days ago. Hui, Lu Yi, and the other four all widened their eyes in shock. At first, the regular contact this time did not send anyone. After waiting for about 10 days, we sent someone to the capital of God in the central region. When we arrived, it had already become a wasteland. Fortunately, the Chaos Devil Wilderness did not corrode the ruins of the capital of God. The demonized energy will remain for some years and automatically dissipate. We received information about the battle in the surrounding cities that were also affected but not destroyed. The battle lasted for a short 11 days. When we sent someone to check, it was just a day after the battle ended. At that time, we could not find anything, not even the route of the demonized life. It fell in 11 days. Lu Yan's body trembled violently. His eyes widened and his palms clenched tightly. Besides, there was nothing. There is still no route. Then how many fortress-like great demons are there? The white-haired youth shook his head. The specific number is unknown. But according to our calculations, at least 200 fortress-like great demons are needed to flatten the capital of God in 11 days. Hui and the others turned their heads to look at the barrier of the 7 rings of the light-chasing tower. Although they did not know much about this creation, judging from the aura on the surface, it should be able to defend against the attack of a mid-level premier. And it could last for a long time. A mid-level premier, even a top-level one, might not be able to destroy it even if he smashed his hand, unless he had a special model, like Maple. In this case, the demonized life in this world should be at least mid-level premier. Good Lord, the danger level of this world had suddenly increased by a few hundred levels. If it increased by a few more levels, Maple would have a reason to go on a killing spree. Let's put those troublesome things aside first. Hui waved his hand to disperse the gloomy atmosphere. Is there no way to fix the expulsion effect? Lu Yin and the white-haired youth turned to look at them together. The former nodded slightly. There's a way to fix it, but we can't find a suitable person. After a moment of silence, he said, Actually, Hui Jun, you are one of the most suitable candidates. We thought about the reason and clapped his hands in realization. Is it because of the ling-po-ling flash on the soles of my feet? Cough, cough, that's how it is. Lu Yin grinned and coughed dryly. Pure consciousness and willpower can repair it after reaching a certain level. But there are so many people in this world. Ning Fei pinched his chin and glanced at the two of them. It's impossible to not find someone with the so-called pure consciousness and willpower in the trillions of lives, right? Indeed, there isn't. If there was, this effect wouldn't continue to weaken. The white-haired youth sighed and looked down at the main temple below. Everyone would be organized and led to the great temple or the main temple for relevant tests after they reach adulthood. Of course, this level of inspection is only an attempt to cover everyone as much as possible. In reality, there will be some people left out, such as this friend. If there is someone who meets the requirements, the Great Shrine will promptly report it, and we have never received such information in the past 1,000 years. He looked at Hui and Ning Fei. You must have been homeless for a long time after the destruction of the city, right? Even when you move to another city, you may not have the time to organize a test because of your status as a refugee. So you have never been tested and have only found out about it now, after a long time? Hui and the other two nodded vigorously. Let him fill in the blanks on his own. It was best that they didn't say anything. The white-haired youth nodded. There hasn't been anyone who could reach the level of this friend for 1,000 years. Note, it's not that the capital of God hasn't appeared for 1,000 years, but the three major areas have not appeared for 1,000 years. The last person who had this level of consciousness and willpower also fell in a battle with the demonized creatures. Ge Zhongming couldn't help but complain. Shouldn't such an important person be protected at every step? Unexpected incident. The white-haired young man heaved a long sigh. His expression was solemn. Moreover, including all of us, as long as we are warriors, we will never die while lying in bed. We are always on the battlefield. Based on this foundation, we have given him the corresponding protection, but it can't be that the city and the people will be destroyed, right? We immediately thought of the worst-case scenario. The white-haired youth sighed and nodded. Hui and the others felt helpless. If the person and the thing that protected him were destroyed together, there was no such thing as protection. All right. Hui put on a complicated expression. He didn't know if he was trying to express his depression or depression. Anyway, now I know what I could do to fix that thing. But what should I do? No hurry. This is a serious matter. We need to inform the others. The white-haired youth shook his head and waved his hand. Moreover, the purifying demon stone needs to be adjusted before it can be repaired. If you touch it in this state, it is likely that you will be connected to the light-chasing tower for a moment. He paused and said in a strange tone, you will be drained dry. We wanted to shout Bullsh *T on the spot. He was a mid-level premier who was close to the peak. He had 30 to 40 world light balls in reserve. It was simply wishful thinking to think that a barrier that could defend against a mid-level premier's attack could drain him dry. Of course, he could only say this in his heart. They were now pretending to be in the early level of premier, so there was a risk that they would be drained dry. All right, then we will wait for a day. Hui nodded. By the way, we have a few people playing outside. They have not been tested. Come together tomorrow. Maybe something unexpected will happen. You are most welcome. It will save a lot of trouble for you to come with Lord Liu. The white-haired youth nodded slightly. Hui left the main hall with Liu Yin and settled down in a resting area a short distance away from the main hall. Hui also told Maple and the others, who were still wandering outside, what he heard here. Maple, who was being dragged by the girls, sounded pretty good. It seemed like he wasn't tortured much. After listening to them, he immediately sighed and said, this place is really exciting. Just a few words and the threat level has increased. Fortunately, I asked Little Qing and the others to prepare their strength in advance. Otherwise, when the time comes to fight, we would be restrained. Hui was stunned. That's not necessary. You don't let me do it. I can carry the energy tower and fight a few rounds, right? You can't really treat me as a mascot and throw me aside to watch the battle, right? Do you think I will just watch the battle? All right. Hui did not know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. Anyway, that's the current situation. You guys continue to stroll around. We will gather at the main hall tomorrow. We will help as much as we can in this world. Wait a minute. Xiao Xiao said that she felt something unusual. She said that the tower did not need another thing to expel the target. That is to say, there was no need for the Great Temple and the Light Chaser Tower to work together to expel the demonized creatures. It should have been like this. TSK, this world is left behind. The things left behind in this world, including this world itself, may be an old antique. It is hard to say if there is a problem somewhere, so we can only add an additional pendant. That's true. Let's talk about the details tomorrow. Maple waved his hand. His soul image suddenly tilted and waved at him. He hurriedly said, "Then see you tomorrow. I still have to deal with them here." Schwang schwang. Don't freeze other people's stalls. Retract your protective cold air a little. We was speechless. Oh, Maple, this is so sad. There was still a lot of time before the end of the day, so they planned to walk around outside. Luyan seemed to have thought of something and brought Xiao Qiu back to the main hall. Only the three of them were left to wander around the capital of God, asking for information and taking care of the people. They thought that the destruction of the capital of God in the central region would cause a long period of panic, but it seemed that there was no one talking about it. They were not sure if the people in the main hall had controlled the information well, or if they did not need to pay attention to this news for too long. After all, they were used to it. With such a peaceful and lively appearance, it was impossible to tell that this world was actually in an abyss of suffering. They were also the type who could celebrate happily 1 second and fight the next second. They were very similar to them. A day passed quickly. When the agreed time came the next day, Hui, Lu Yin, and the others had nothing to do, so they stood at the entrance of the main hall and waited. Hui sent a message. Knowing that Maple and the others would arrive in less than 2 minutes, he was relieved. Then, 2 minutes later, when they saw Maple and the others, Hui and the others were shocked. This time, Maple was carrying the little angel on his back and holding Blue Phoenix and Schwang Schwang in his left and right hands. He looked like a dragon and a tiger. On the other hand, the girls were supporting each other at this moment. They all looked exhausted, as if they were paralyzed from exhaustion. Seeing their jaws drop, those who did not know would think that something had happened here. Seeing their shocked expressions, Yin Nuashing shook her head and flashed a victorious smile at Hui and the others. As long as you don't turn into a girl and throw me on the street, just shopping is purely a waste of energy. You want to tire me to death. Impossible. Even if this land is flattened, I won't be the first to fall. Hui was speechless. She was letting herself go. Well, it did not seem like she was letting herself go. She was just being proud. It seemed that these girls knew their limits when they tortured him. They knew that he hated to die in public, so they did not torture him in a place like the capital of God, where there were so many people. It was just that he did not know what to say. He could only say that they were indeed a family. After shopping, one side would be energized and the other side would be dispirited. They really had a tacit understanding. However, to be able to make these maidservants so tired after strolling around the streets was truly amazing. What exactly happened to make this group of girls so tired that they were lying on the ground? It's nothing. Yin Nuashing stroked her long hair elegantly. Fun places are always crowded. When there are so many people, they will push and shove. Although I tried my best to open a path for them, I can't clear the entire place with a burst of energy. Then, I pushed and shoved and this happened. Then why are you so energetic? Because I'm surrounded by them. I don't even have to walk myself. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Hui, ahem, it's getting late. Let's go in. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.